Chapter 609. When the Supreme Pontiff of Light displayed his majesty, all the sages submitted to him. Whether they were convinced or not, they were all convinced on the surface. No one dared to say that they wanted to challenge him to a duel. Of course, the sages did not submit to him. They were just following their hearts. After all, they could endure for a while. The more they thought about it, the angrier they got. They had to reach the sage realm before they could regain their dignity. Therefore, everything was carried out in an orderly manner and in full swing. The preparations of the various forces had to be completed within a month. Under this extreme pressure, the entire God's continent became peaceful, which they had not seen for a long time. No one knew the coordinates of the teleportation portal when the attack was launched. The Supreme Pontiff of Light would inform all the factions to launch an attack on the Dark World at the same time. This was to prevent any accidents from happening. The huge machine that was the City of Dawn began to operate in full swing. Space rings were filled with magical beast meat, water, and ordinary rations. They were distributed to the quartermasters. There were 18 million civilians in William's territory. Among them, there were 2 million professionals, 3 million regular soldiers, and 700,000 NPC mercenaries. Naturally, the players who were not present were not included. At least half of the soldiers, 3 legendary professionals, and 20 epic experts. William made a decision after pondering for a while. Of the 1 million soldiers, he decided to let the regular soldiers and the mercenaries take up 500,000 each. He had no choice. The regular soldiers were his favorite. They had a higher bloodline potential. Although the Dawn mercenaries were loyal to him, they were weaker than the regular soldiers in terms of training and combat power. William did not want to use all his trump cards in this mission. Of course, the legendary Dragonblood Legion would definitely participate in the battle. They were invincible. They would go wherever there was a problem. When William entered the magic tower again, he saw the letter and a large pile of scrolls left behind by Moses. Obviously, Goddess Moses had left. She was only one step away from the sage realm. She was about to break through, but he did not know how long it would take. William glanced at the little witch who was in charge of guarding the magic tower. He walked over with a smile and looked down. It was not that he wanted to look, but it was too big, and Moses was not around. When the blood moon witch saw his expression, she clenched her small fists and took a few steps back nervously. When she leaned against the wall and could no longer move back, she closed her eyes and whispered, "Master, please take pity on me, bah!" He looked at the little witch, who was clutching her forehead and crying in pain. He said, "You only know how to think all day. Don't think that I don't know that you want to trick me at any time. But don't stay at the magic tower and watch. Sia will guard the magic tower for you. You'll follow me to the Dark World." Ah! The blood moon little witch looked at him pitifully, as if she didn't want to go. But His Royal Highness said, "Don't give me that look. Let me tell you, there are many creatures with blood in the Dark World. There are countless of them. Think about it. If you devour millions of creatures, will you be able to step into the legendary realm?" Instantly, the eyes of the blood moon, big-breasted, long-legged witch lit up. She licked her lips evilly and promised that she would go. But now, the little witch was no longer a threat to His Royal Highness. When His Royal Highness saw her licking her lips, he didn't feel evil. He only felt guilty. Fortunately, William had good self-control. He waved his hand and asked her to stay at the side, so that the big white thing would not be an eyesore. Subsequently, after inspecting the iron chain warships on the ocean, William said to Douglet, who had already become a legend, "The outbreak of the beast tide will depend on you and Jack. If there's really something difficult to deal with, then go to the Dark World through the portal to find me." "Don't worry, Royal Highness." Douglet confidently took out the sea god's trident and said in a deep voice, "I've inherited the sea god's legacy. Coupled with the effects of this divine weapon, My control over the sea is beyond my imagination. Jack also controls sea monster Paul, who is at the peak of the legendary realm. In the sea, he can even unleash the power of a sage. As long as there are no sage sea monsters in the beast tide, they won't be able to break through our defense line. William nodded. He stopped thinking about the problems of the coastal cities in the City of Dawn. Then, he went to the alternate dimension where the magical weapon manufacturing factory was, after confirming a series of matters with the person in charge. Thus, he completely distributed the magic energy weapons to all the legions to use. The City of Dawn sent out 1,000,000 soldiers. There were 200 legions with 5,000 soldiers. Each legion had 100 heavy-duty magical Gatling guns, 30 magical annihilation guns, and 30 magic cannons. It could be said that, as long as the Dawn Army had a chance to set up their formation, these 20,000 heavy-duty magical Gatling guns were enough to teach the creatures of the Dark World how to behave. They would let them understand that all beings were equal in front of the magical Gatling guns. As long as there were no trump cards comparable to the legendary Dragonblood Legion or unscrupulous legendary experts, no one would be able to charge into the great formation of the City of Dawn. But this was not the most important thing. Among the 200 legions, there were 5 legions that were fully equipped with magical weapons. These legions were made up of cannon gunners. These 5 legions had a total of 5,000 heavy-duty Gatling guns of version 5.0. The portable magical Gatling guns were the standard, and so were the magical annihilation guns. It was simple. These 5 cannon gunner legions were the other trump cards of the City of Dawn. They would be able to display unimaginable might on this battlefield of millions of living beings. This is just the combat power of the City of Dawn. Since I've joined forces with the Temple of Light, they won't be weak. They might even be stronger than the City of Dawn. William narrowed his eyes. He believed that with this level of firepower, even if there were endless dark creatures in all directions, he could still build an outpost there. Unless, don't raise flags. William was still unsure of which legendary experts should be sent to the Dark World. A powerful aura suddenly emanated from the City of Dawn. Metal elements engulfed the entire City of Dawn and revolved around it. William turned his head to take a look. A metal elemental storm had formed, causing the clouds in the sky to turn golden. Countless small metal particles were condensed. Countless people looked up at the sky and at the metal ball that was slowly floating in the sky. Time passed. The metal ball became bigger and bigger. Eventually, it flew up into the clouds and hovered above the City of Dawn like a satellite. Many people exclaimed, "Diablo is about to enter the legendary realm." Diablo is a dual practitioner of battle energy and magic. His aura is very powerful. The commoners prayed for Diablo to successfully enter the legendary realm. A full 3 hours passed. There was a cracking sound. A crack appeared on the seemingly sturdy metal ball. Crack, crack. More and more cracks appeared like a spider web. But the satellite-like metal ball did not shatter and fall to the ground. Instead, it began to transform in a strange state. It kept shrinking and condensing, until the metal ball, which was 1,000 meters long, transformed into a human figure. In the next moment, a ring-shaped shock wave spread along with the roar. Diablo, who was wearing metal elemental armor, slowly landed on the ground. William was surprised. Diablo, who had been with William since the beginning, was very powerful. When Diablo was an advanced, grandmaster, and epic warrior, his combat power had always been very strong. But because William was using the cheat code, some of the kids who did not use the cheat code could not keep up with him. That was why Diablo's presence was not as strong. But those who were capable would become successful sooner or later. Even if William did not give him special care, Diablo had still relied on his own abilities to enter the legendary level. It was not easy. It was the first time William had seen such a situation. A professional had used the elemental power when he broke through to the next realm and created an elemental armor for himself. Damn it. Fortunately, it was only a legendary elemental equipment set. It was not as awesome as William's divine equipment set. Otherwise, he would be envious. Burned Cinder, Sarimas, Alfred, Wendy, Legolas, and the others flew over to congratulate Diablo. Diablo was in a good mood. He waved his hand and condensed a large number of disposable metal spears. If he threw them, not only would they have strong penetrative power, but they would also explode. The resulting metal fragments would have the power of a legendary. He gave these small gifts to his old friends, Whales, Violent Dragon, and the others smiled as they received the gift. William noticed that they had gathered together. He walked over and said, "What do you think about the mission of the Dark Outpost?" "Let's go," everyone said in unison. "It's a little difficult. The City of Dawn can't only have one legendary, Douglet. There have to be at least two." William shook his head. He looked at his subordinates, who looked disappointed. But he still smiled and said, "Don't think that this mission is a good thing. If the previous missions had a 50-50 chance of success, this time, there might be a situation where we fail. Because you know that the Dark World won't care about anything when we fight against them. They won't bully the weak. If the King of Darkness attacks you, it will be difficult for me to stop him. How about this? Sarimas, Burned Cinder, Diablo, and Wendy, the four of you will follow me. At least after the mission of the Dark Outpost is stabilized and the teleportation portal is secured, the rest of you can go." William then pointed out some epic experts who could go to the Dark Outpost. Alfred was a little depressed when he realized that he had not been chosen. Ever since he had joined the City of Dawn, he had discovered the benefits of joining the camp. Now, his loyalty to William had reached 800 plus. He regretted going against the City of Dawn and wanted to show his loyalty. William patted his shoulder and said, "The crisis of the sea monsters has not been resolved. The other cities might also be threatened. Your mission is very important and you will have a chance to go when the time comes." Just as Alfred was scratching his head, a voice suddenly rang out. Annie flew over on her rainbow pony. She softly said, "I'll go too." William smiled and said, "Okay." Another 45 days passed. The voice of the Supreme Pontiff of Light traveled to their ears. Teleportation portals were opened one by one. The sages were the first to bear the brunt. The legendary experts followed closely behind. Epic Grandmaster, legion after legion advanced wave after wave. When William entered the Dark World, he was about to face the hidden devil army. Daylight appeared. The entire Dark World was like a snow-white and warm world. Countless dark creatures hidden in the darkness howled incessantly, and even some low-level dark creatures were turned to dust. The Supreme Pontiff of Light made his move at this moment. He suppressed the entire Dark World. Chapter 610. It was as bright as day in the Dark World. Countless dark creatures wailed under the light. The legendaries trembled. Their bodies felt as though they had been thrown into a pot of boiling oil. Their skin and flesh were melting. It was not fatal, but it was painful. Although the Dark Lords could resist the holy light, they had to prostrate on the ground. They could only growl like wild beasts to express their dissatisfaction. Main gods. Super sages. Once they performed the gods' miracle. There was only one thing that the two continents could do. Tens of thousands of races would submit and worship them. The Supreme Pontiff of Light was using his supreme power to give the sages and legendaries from the gods' continents the best time to attack. He was preventing them from being ambushed. But this godly skill, which could cover the entire Dark World, could not be maintained for long. But the holy light shone for 30 seconds. It gave many forces an opportunity. Sages, legendaries, and epic warriors entered the battlefield. Even the trump-card legions had charged into the battlefield. 30 seconds later, including William, the City of Dawn had 6 legendaries, 20 epic warriors, and 10 Grandmaster legions who had come to the Dark World. They were less than a kilometer away from the City of Dawn. The deputy temple lord of the Temple of Light, the sage expert Ursula, hovered in the sky. He gazed at the sky as though he was trying to find the enemy that could ambush them. 10 legendary temple knights and pastors were guarding the surroundings to prevent the enemy from attacking. Other than that, there were also a large number of temple knights, priests, and so on. After the armies of both sides appeared in the dark world that was filled with scorching dust, they quickly gathered together under the leadership of the epic-level professionals to prevent the enemy from bullying and slaughtering them. Meanwhile, the great magisters continued to cast spells to buff the army. They also had to reinforce the soil beneath their feet to prevent dark creatures from crawling out of the ground. They immediately threw out countless resources from their spatial rings, as well as ready-made walls, foundations, and so on. Diablo was also helping. He had several space rings that contained metals that were the size of a mountain range. With a wave of his hand, many metal cannons were uprooted from the ground. With the efforts of many legendary and enchanters, the outline of a city was formed within 3 minutes. This kind of unimaginable construction speed could only be truly demonstrated at a time like this. William also flew into the sky. His eye of the thunder flashed with electric arcs, and he quickly understood the surrounding terrain. They were on top of a mountain that was thousands of meters tall. But what was more interesting was that the top of this mountain seemed to have been cut by a saint, causing their position to be like a flat mountain, with a large area of flat terrain. The interior of this pitch-black mountain seemed to be filled with all kinds of rare metals. It was obvious that their outpost was built on a treasure mountain. The prerequisite was that they had to defend this place in order to obtain the resources within. As for the lonely flat-topped mountain, it was surrounded by lava rivers that seemed to form a good defensive environment. But if there was no accident, there would definitely be flame devils appearing in this damned place. 3 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, 35 minutes after the Light Pope cast holy light illumination, William finally discovered the traces of the Dark Army. It was a dark army formed by countless dark creatures. Countless devils floated in the sky, using their instincts to control the dark creatures to attack the flat-topped mountain range. This time, there were too many things that ordinary people had never seen before in the Dark Army. The bone dragons were so rotten that only their bones were left. They spat out black dragon breath that had unimaginable corrosive power. There were hell giants that were hundreds of meters tall. Their eyes were burning with flames, and they held maces that were tens of meters long. Every step they took would crush countless dark creatures. Other than that, there was also the large Death Knight Legion. There were skeleton soldiers and countless undead creatures. Many warriors looked at them with their naked eyes, and their legs trembled in fear. There were too many of them. There were millions and tens of millions of dark soldiers. There were too many of them. It was unimaginable. East, south, west, north. They came from all directions. Lava lizards with burning bodies crawled out from the lava rivers around the dark, flat-topped mountain. After more than 30 minutes of setting up camp, the enchanters and great enchanters had built a steel fortress on the flat-topped mountain. In the center of the steel fortress, there was a defense super-magical formation, which was made up of 100,000 magical crystals. This magic array could unleash a tremendous amount of energy, allowing it to flow through the entire mountain range and the fortress. Its purpose was to fuse the fortress and the mountain range into one, greatly strengthening it. Its defensive capabilities were decent, and it could also prevent the outpost from being destroyed by huge forces and tremors. Get to the city wall. You bunch of cowards, stop saying that your legs are weak. Get to the city wall immediately. Remember, we are in charge of the east and south walls. Don't go to the wrong place and affect the performance of our allies. Where are the heavy-duty magical Gatling guns? All of you, stand up for me. What the hell are you bastards thinking about? I want all 20,000 heavy-duty magical Gatling guns to appear on the city wall," Meng Lu shouted. "How many of them are cannon turrets? Don't worry about it. 1 cannon shell and 3 magic cannons. Move them up. Shield warriors in front, warriors in the back, and rangers in the back. Quartermaster, you are in charge of the rangers' arrows. Let them shoot until their arms are fractured." Many rangers' mouths twitched, but they didn't say anything. They didn't dare to say anything. They were the safest. If anything happened to the shield warriors and warriors in front, it wouldn't just be a matter of fractured arms. The epic commanders and legion commanders of the City of Dawn were shouting crazily. The city wall of the military fortress was only 30 meters tall. As the city wall was built at the edge of the flat-topped mountain, the length of each wall was more than 30,000 meters. In total, there was a battle line of 120,000 meters. The thickness of the city wall was beyond imagination. It was more than 20 meters thick. Even if a legendary professional were to hit it, he would only be able to create a large pit. He wouldn't be able to completely destroy it. The city wall had been refined long ago. Before it was taken out, it was hidden in the space ring. Actually, the commander of the Temple of Light didn't make a big fuss. But as the atmosphere became more and more tense, and as the Dark Army approached, the Dark Army started to join forces with the commander of the City of Dawn. They started cursing and swearing. They wished that these B** stars could get into formation as soon as possible. At the same time, the first wave of the Dark Army's invasion had appeared. Tens of thousands of giant lava lizards crawled out of the lava river surrounding the flat-topped mountain. Each of them was 7 to 8 meters long. Not only was lava flowing on the surface of their bodies, but their bodies were also burning with flames. Their claws were very sharp, and they could easily break through the rocky cliff. They continued to climb up. The scales on their heads and backs were also very hard. Most of them were high-level magical beasts. They were abnormally powerful. However, after they climbed up the 1,000-meter-tall mountain, no matter how sharp their claws were, they couldn't break through the city wall. In the end, they could only attempt to climb to the top of the city wall by piling on top of each other. As one of the City of Dawn's biggest customers, the Temple of Light had purchased many magic Gatling guns. Although there weren't many of them, there were still tens of thousands of them. Furthermore, the Temple of Light had its own advanced technology, which was the Sacred Light Magic Cannon. The power of each cannon couldn't be compared to the magic cannon, but it could be fired continuously, and there were many of them. In addition, the cannon had the special effects of sacred light and holy water. The destructive power of the cannon against dark creatures was comparable to that of the magic cannon. In general, under the joint defense of both sides, this military fortress had an absolute defense. But they didn't know how many Dark Lords would be attracted by this battle. William looked at the giant lava lizards that were piling on top of each other. He didn't order his subordinates to attack. Instead, he signaled Diablo with his eyes. Both of them came out of the city wall and released a few bursts of battle energy to kill the giant lava lizards. In the dark world, dark elements occupied 7 levels of the fortress. When a normal professional absorbed magic, it would take a long time to convert it into battle energy. But the recovery speed of a legendary professional was much faster than that of a low-level professional. So instead of letting the legendary professionals attack, it was better to let the legendary professionals kill the small fries. The legendary professionals of the Temple of Light also understood this logic. Before the Dark Army arrived, the legendary professionals used their battle energy to throw the small fries to the bottom of the mountain, which was thousands of meters high. The fries were smashed into a pile of meat paste. The flesh of the giant lava lizards was too sour. There was nothing to eat next. The entire fortress became extremely quiet. The first batch of professionals on the city wall looked at the dark creatures in all directions. Many of them couldn't help but breathe heavily. But most of them kept their mouths shut and wore special gas masks to prevent themselves from inhaling the harmful impurities. The air in the dark world was filled with poison. Professionals below the advanced level couldn't resist it. Even a high-level professional could not live here for a long time without a magic mask. Unless they had a steady supply of medical help or various buffs, they wouldn't be able to survive here. But the City of Dawn and the Temple of Light were prepared. Almost all the advanced professionals had this special mask. Time passed slowly. The rumbling sounds got closer. When the Dark Army was only tens of thousands of meters away from the plateau, the attacking Dark Army stopped in their tracks. William thought that the Lord of Darkness would appear and say something in the end. Buzz. The sound of the horn shook the heavens and the earth. The attack of the Dark Army was about to begin. Countless dark creatures burst forth with their fastest speed and surged towards the fortress at the same time. Dark clouds were rolling. The earth was trembling. The 1,000-meter-tall mountain was trembling. It was as if the dark waves were about to completely bury the reef. A great battle. It was about to start. Chapter 6:11. The Lord of Darkness remained hidden. Naturally, Ursula was the same. If the enemy doesn't move, I won't move either. Why did they need two sages to fight in the dark world? What was defense? What was offense? Ursula chose to defend the military fortress. It meant that he had to protect all the professionals in the fortress and prevent the enemy Lord of Darkness from attacking. As for the sages who chose to attack, they could kill anyone. They used the largest domain and the most powerful moves to kill all the dark creatures. No matter what level the enemy was, they could only kill. Everything was to reduce the pressure faced by their own warriors. This was a war between light and darkness. There were no hidden rules here. In this war, there was only one rule. The winner would be the king. William was the commander-in-chief of the 10 outposts. He was responsible for roaming the battlefield and resolving the crisis. The rest was about this. Many of the legendary masters of the Brilliance Shrine expressed great distrust towards Ursula. Fortunately, it was not the time for them to take the initiative to attack. They only needed to guard the fortress. They also believed that Ursula could withstand the pressure brought by the Dark Lord. Lancelot was full of confidence in his old friend. But he did not have time to chat with William. Time passed slowly. Hundreds of thousands of warriors on the 4 city walls watched the Dark Army approaching. The word "kill" resounded in the heavens and earth. At that moment, thousands of magic cannons lit up at the same time. It was accompanied by a buzzing sound. Thousands of magic cannons shot out at the same time, causing mushroom clouds of various sizes to form in the Dark Army. Destructive energy shockwaves spread over 1,000 meters, and dark creatures like the Dark Knights and skeleton soldiers fell to the ground like dominoes. Everything within a few hundred meters of the center of the explosion was reduced to ashes. There were even several dark giants that were over 100 meters tall that died at this moment. Their chests and heads were either smashed to smithereens or their entire bodies were smashed into pieces. 3 large bone dragons were hit and fell to the ground. It was unknown if they were dead or alive. The dwarfs had developed the creation of the gnomes at the end of the 2nd era. By the 4th era, the bone dragons had been upgraded to their limit. Just the first wave. Hundreds of thousands of dark creatures had fallen here. Some of them were epic monsters. But at the same time, more dark creatures charged forward. They climbed the tall mountains or flew into the sky, attacking the fortress that belonged to the gods' continent from all directions. Fire! William roared angrily. Fire! The epic-level commanders and army commanders roared. Fire! Countless soldiers puffed out their chests and roared at the top of their lungs. At that moment, countless magical weapons were bursting with dazzling light. The magic energy Gatling guns were fully activated, aiming at the ground below, the front, and the high altitude as energy bullets were slanted. A series of battle energy skills and magic skills covered the sky as they surged towards the dark creatures in all directions. The enemy's attack was like a dark tide, surging forward violently. At this moment, in this dusky sky, in this blood-red battlefield, when all the scenes erupted. It was just like a battle to defend a planet. It was like the human race was facing countless Zergs, unleashing the most powerful firepower imaginable. But now, no one would be immersed in such a shocking scene. Many epic experts in the Dark Army charged up the city walls in an attempt to destroy the cannons and the magic energy Gatling guns. They also discovered that these powerful items were the most important war weapons. As long as they could get their hands on these things, the Dark Race Army wouldn't suffer so many losses even if they didn't have a 90% chance of winning the war. But they did not expect that. The epic experts in the fortress had not appeared. Many Grandmaster Rangers and Cannon Gunners had already raised their magic energy destruction guns and locked onto the epic experts. Along with the deafening sound of gunfire, the sound of gunfire rang out. Of the more than 40 epic experts that rushed out, more than 20 of them stopped in the air and were torn apart by the magic energy Gatling gun. Otherwise, they would be shot dozens of times and their bodies would be smashed into pieces. It was a tragic sight to behold as they fell into the midst of the Dark Army. No one knew if they would survive. Upon witnessing this scene, many epic experts retreated and did not dare to advance. But the legendary experts in the Dark Army were enraged. They had many questions in their minds. What the F***ck? This was a magical fantasy world. Everyone was using cold weapons to begin with, but you forcefully turned it into an interstellar battlefield? Damn it. Can't you ask for more? If you do this, I won't play with you anymore. The legendary demons, Death Knights, Headless Horsemen, Balrogs, and so on all surrounded the throne of darkness. One of the legendary demons even cursed, "To be honest, these surface creatures are too shameless." That existence used God's descent at the beginning, causing many ambushes to fail. Now they're still using these fancy things. If they have the ability, fight us head-on. But even if that person dares to suppress the entire world, he won't dare to last too long. Otherwise, when the God descends, the world of gods will experience endless darkness. A Death Knight sneered. "My lord, should we attack?" A demon looked at the Lord of Darkness on the throne. Agars, the second-ranked god of the 72 demon gods, had long since stepped into the Lord of Darkness level. After the battle with Burial, he had always been in his territory and did not participate in the war against Demon King Burial. At this moment, he was dressed in armor, and his helmet only revealed a pair of pitch-black eyes. Agars looked at the battlefield in front of him quietly. After pondering for a long time, he said, "Do you know who that existence that surpassed the Saint Realm is?" Dozens of legendary experts lowered their heads in confusion or fear, but they were all completely ignorant. It could not be helped. When they did not participate in the war in the world of gods, they had very little understanding of the continent. Agars said in a low voice, "Half of the professionals in this fortress are under that person's command." Many legendary experts were shocked. Among them, the legendary demon who said he wanted to attack knelt while trembling, trying to get his lord to forgive his ignorance. It was obvious. Agars didn't blame his men. He just stood up slowly and put his left hand on the black hilt of his sword. "In fact, this war isn't going to end in an instant. But I also want to ask you, do you think I should do it myself?" He said in a tone that answered his own question. No one dared to respond. So he said again, "My lord said that if I can kill half of the army of the Brilliant Shrine, I will have a further opportunity. Do you think I should go?" Many legendary demons shook their heads, obviously feeling that it was not worth it. But Agars continued, "My lord also said that if I can kill all the troops of the Brilliant Shrine, I will definitely step into the peak of the Overlord. And if I can kill that Deputy Lord, that is, Ursula, he will let me cultivate in the origin of darkness for 1,000 years, and even have a certain chance to step into a higher realm. Tell me." His voice suddenly became extremely loud. "Should I go and kill them?" Dozens of legendary demons looked at him with bright eyes, and at the same time they knelt on the ground and roared, my lord's combat power is unparalleled. Even in the battle with Demon King Burial, you were not at a disadvantage. The chances of killing that Ursula are definitely not small. Unfortunately, Agars laughed at himself in his heart. 10 Dark Lords besieged Burial and were defeated. How could they say such a thing? But he still said, "Do you really think I'm stupid? Ursula's aura is like that of a beginner of the Sage Realm." What a joke! How can there be a beginner of the Sage Realm who has lived for 10,000 years in the world? How can there be a Deputy Lord who has lived for more than 10,000 years in the world? How many years of history does the Brilliance Shrine have? He narrowed his eyes, and when he looked at Ursula, he was full of caution. He said bluntly, "Actually, we are in charge of the 2 walls in the southeast. Paimon is in charge of the other 2 walls. Just leave Ursula to him." Why should I do this? But when Agars turned to William, he said with a cold expression, "Kill. Double the attack from the southeast. As long as one wall is broken, it will be very difficult for them to continue defending this fortress. If we compare the two, we will have made more contributions, and our God may give us some rewards. Moreover, my lord also said that the rewards for killing this so-called Son of Destiny are also very rich." Agars narrowed his eyes, and his body disappeared into the void. In the next moment, more than 30 legendary professionals broke through the sky at the same time. They were like red meteors, and they exploded at a speed that was visible to the naked eye. Along with the air waves that formed circular shock waves, they charged straight at the 2 walls. Ursula calmly looked at the sky. He seemed to have sensed something. William turned to look at him and gestured for him not to make a move. Subsequently, Burned Cinder, Diablo, Sarimas, Wendy and Annie all stood up. At the same time, William used beans to transform into soldiers. The aura of nearly 30 legendary professionals appeared on the battlefield. There were also dozens of epic professionals. When they saw this scene, the experts of the Dark Army were also stunned. But they had good eyesight. They could tell that the legendary professionals were just puppet. No wonder. There was only one sage guarding this place. It turned out that this peak legendary expert was also a very powerful puppet master. But when the legendary professionals from both sides collided with each other, a shadow appeared on the surface of William's body. He took a step forward and punched out fiercely. Bang! The space cracked inch by inch. A series of ring-shaped shock waves spread out in all directions. Solid thunderbolts roared out and instantly traversed hundreds of thousands of meters. A figure hidden in the space retreated along with the thunderbolt. His body smashed the bodies of several legendary devils and tore an abyss in the Dark Army. Then he rolled and bounced on the ground. Agars, who was covered in injuries and had lost his armor, was dumbfounded. He was really dumbfounded. He was in a trance from this punch. But at the same time, William descended from the sky. He fiercely stomped on Agar's chest. Another punch smashed on Agar's head. Bang! Agar's arms, which he tried to block, were broken, and his head disappeared. The ground within a radius of 100,000 meters sank by tens of meters. Countless dark creatures were hit by this punch. At the same time, they turned into a pile of meat paste. The legendary experts and the countless dark creatures that had arrived at the 2 sides of the city wall were all stunned. They looked at the headless corpse of their lord in bewilderment. Their lord seemed to want to recover from his injuries, but he was firmly controlled by that man. At this moment, the dark creatures were completely dumbfounded. The entire battlefield was silent at this moment. Even Ursula, who was guarding the fortress, stood up. The Lord of Darkness, who was hidden in another layer of clouds, looked at William in disbelief. William held the undead Agars in one hand and slowly stretched his waist. He chuckled and said, "Legendary killing sage? I've never seen it before? Then you're really inexperienced." "Charge!" William shouted angrily. The legendary and epic experts of the City of Dawn went out to fight. Ursula slowly sat down. He looked deeply at the shadow on William's body and looked at the sky in a daze. God's descent? Chapter 6:12. The meaning of God's descent was obvious. The avatar of the god would descend into a living being's body and provide the living being with extremely powerful combat power. In the battlefield of the mythological era, the true bodies of the gods were usually high and mighty. They would not appear at all, but the avatar of the gods would perform God's descent under the prayers of the believers. From then on, they would win the war and obtain greater benefit. But there was one thing. There was a huge price to pay for God's descent. It was not for the gods. It was for the people who were affected by the God's descent. Because they could not withstand the descent of the God's avatar, after the God's descent ended, their bodies would disintegrate and their life potential would be exhausted. They would not live for long. This price was not something that the life potion could save. But what about William? Ursula looked at William's smiling expression. He knew that William's descent would not have any side effect. That's King inconceivable. To think that a selfish god would choose to consume his own divine power rather than waste the life potential of his host. That's completely King impossible. What level of God's descent is this? Avatar. It can't be his true body, right? If it's not his true body, how could William have such powerful combat power and defeat a Lord of Darkness? But if it's the true body of a god, that's not right. Even if the body of a god can be transformed into energy, a legendary professional might not be able to withstand it. Unless the god and the god have the same body, it doesn't make sense. Ursula had a splitting headache. He could not understand what technique William had used. But if it was a technique that did not consume any energy, not just the legendary continent, but the entire God's world would look at the City of Dawn in a new light. William's God's descent state had not ended. His body transformed into a blood-red lightning and dashed into the battlefield. Streaks of lightning filled with plasma spread out. This extremely hot and powerful red lightning spread out like a shockwave the moment it exploded, turning all the dark creatures within a radius of tens of thousands of meters into ashes. The ground was also turned into mush, ensuring that there were no living creatures left on the ground that could still move. Meanwhile, when he arrived at the center of the Dark Army, the Thunder Sanctuary was activated. Rumble. It was a massive and transparent spherical lightning barrier that expanded to a radius of 100,000 meters in an extremely short period of time. Within this domain, countless bolts of lightning flowed within, and the ground was filled with arcs of electricity. Inside this transparent lightning dome was a blood-red world. Red lightning liquid floated in all directions, forming a sea of lightning. In just a few seconds, every dark creature below the legendary rank was reduced to ashes. There was no other way. It was too hot. It was too powerful. In particular, the power of lightning had a great restraining effect on creatures of darkness. If one did not personally experience it, no one would be able to imagine just how hot and deadly the lightning of a lightning saint was. When the dark creatures faced William, they felt as if they had plunged into the sun. They died on the spot without any resistance. This was the effect of a saint massacring a low-level battlefield. In less than 30 seconds, a quarter of Agar's army of more than 4 million creatures had died at William's hands. Even if they were killing low-level creatures, they still provided him with a lot of experience points. At this moment, the Dark Army no longer had the mentality to continue attacking. Even though many legendary devils were roaring and commanding the battlefield, most of the dark creatures had started to flee uncontrollably. However, it was unknown whether Paimon, who was on the other side of the battlefield, could not bear to watch any longer, or whether he intended to gather Agar's army. He transformed into a ray of rainbow light, tore through space, and instantly appeared in front of William. William clashed his fist with Paimon's. Pom, 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 pom. A huge shockwave tore the ground apart. A lot of magma was spurted thousands of meters into the sky due to this huge pressure. Some innocent Balrogs who had just escaped were instantly squashed into meat paste. The space in front of them was hammered, forming a pitch-black crack. When the magical elements were squeezed together, they exploded continuously. Both of them retreated hundreds of meters. They only managed to stop after stomping on the air. William raised his eyebrows when he saw the newcomer, Paimon. He was one of the 72 devil gods and had the title of one of the 4 supreme pillars. He was one of the 4 strongest among the 72 devil god. He had the combat power of an advanced sage, so he was not weak. It had to be known. Odin had returned to the mythological era and become a main god. But after he returned to the current timeline, he could not bring his cultivation and realm back. He could only have his original strength, which was the combat power of an intermediate god. He just had some endowments and skills. It was the same for God's descent. It allowed William to have the full strength of Odin for a short period of time. Meanwhile, the 3-meter-tall muscle man glanced at the crack on his fist and said in a muffled voice, "Combat power close to that of a high-level holy level? Not bad. Let me test your abilities." In the next second, when Paimon attacked again, the dark elements were extracted from the magic that filled the sky. In a short period of time, they formed a fist that was thousands of meters long and hammered towards William. William sneered. When the energy fist swept up a tornado and approached, he used sword draw. A blood-red lightning sword energy tore through the sky. The sword energy shot from the ground to the sky. This indescribably dazzling sword energy seemed to have come from the sky, and it had infinite power. Not only did it cut off the fist that was thousands of meters long, but it also tore through the space and hit the surface of Paimon's body. Rumble. Accompanied by the sound of air explosions, his body was embedded in the mountain like a cannonball. The mountain that was thousands of meters tall was shaking violently. Huge rocks kept falling, and the impact formed by the collision spread out layer by layer like ripples, causing countless dark creatures to be flung to the surface. If not for the stabilizing and strengthening magic formation, and the defensive preparations that Ursula had made before, this mountain would have been destroyed by William and Ursula. But Paimon's counterattack was even faster. His feet crushed the mountain that was hundreds of meters tall, and he turned into a rainbow light and collided with William again. The two of them were entangled and fell into the distance. They dragged out a 10,000-meter-long ditch on the ground. After bouncing back and forth, they once again clashed head-on with their fists against the sword energy. The sound of metal and stone colliding resounded in the sky. Waves of air swept across the ruined land. The constant collision between the two of them created pressure that caused the ground under their feet to sink continuously. Magma in the depths of the ground kept sputtering into the sky. The battle between the two was like the end of the world, and it caused unimaginable damage to the Darkness continent. And this was just a battle between two sages. The sages' group battle at the end of the Second Era had destroyed the entire Gods continent. This was enough to prove that if existences like them did not fight in the space of sages, there would be no place in the world that was suitable for ordinary creatures to live. But it was obvious. Paimon was really strong. This muscular man who had stepped into the sage realm purely with his physical body could even resist the lethality of the heaven-suppressing blade for a short period of time. In particular, his combat strength was half a level higher than William's. Because Odin's god's descent had fused with William, he could at most be considered as a middle-level sage. He was still half a step away from reaching the advanced sage realm. But even so, William still relied on Odin's previous combat experience to forcefully fight to a draw with him. The attacks of the dark side did not stop. The battlefield between the two of them was not nearby. This group of reckless fellows started to attack again. Ursula, who was guarding the center of the military fortress, no longer concealed his strength. He also chose to attack and defeat this group of B****-starred. In the next moment, Holy light shone. Countless dark creatures surrounding the military fortress saw the dazzling white light that illuminated the dark world. Within a radius of hundreds of thousands of meters, the dazzling white light covered every inch of the land. Like snow melting in the spring, many low-level dark creatures were reduced to puddles of blood as soon as the light shone on their bodies. Even if the other high-level dark creatures could resist, all their attributes would be greatly reduced. Even the legendary devils suffered the same fate. All the legendary and epic creatures in the military fortress seized the opportunity to rush to the outer perimeter of the city and started a massacre against the countless dark army. Diablo was like Magneto. He threw out a mountain of metal particles from his space ring and transformed into a tornado that rushed towards the dark army. Wherever the metal storm passed, ordinary epic devils would be sliced into pieces. Sarimas transformed into the time dragon. He flapped his wings and knocked a bone dragon to the ground. The two of them fought, and within a short 10 seconds, he had torn the ancient dragon into pieces. The time realm that he formed caused countless creatures to continuously distort, age rapidly, or turn into babies, burned cinder. Annie, Wendy, every single one of them was a legendary professional who could fight against many enemies. With the help of William's legendary and epic heroic spirits, the moment all of them rushed out, with the firepower of the mana Gatling guns and magic cannons, the scales of victory were already on their side. The legendary professionals of the Temple of Light were not weak either. When Lancelot faced the dark creatures, he had no worries. He transformed into a light sword that was thousands of meters long and charged into the dark army of millions, slashing them into pieces. But Paimon, who was engaged in a fierce battle with William, acted as if he did not see it. He allowed the dark army of 8 million to perish here. But nobody noticed, more and more dark creatures were killed. The battlefield around the plateau had turned into a sea of blood. The dark elements became denser and denser. If a dark element professional trained, he might enter a state of epiphany and increase his level. Until this moment, Paimon borrowed the power of William's sword and retreated to the center of the battlefield. In the next second, William's expression changed drastically. Paimon's body instantly grew to thousands of meters. He was like a giant that covered the sky. He started to absorb the dense dark elements and countless amounts of fresh blood. His aura also increased rapidly. His combat power was that of an advanced sage, and it was getting closer to the pinnacle of the sage level. William brandished his sword and slashed at Paimon. But he only lost 50% of his health points. He was unable to kill Paimon. 10 seconds later, accompanied by a roar, Paimon, who was enveloped by crimson dark elements, reappeared before everyone's eyes. At this moment, heaven and earth celebrated. The pinnacle of the sage level. At the same time, all the professionals in the military fortress were dumbfounded. The guy in front of him paid the price of 8 million dark creatures to help him step into this realm. But just as William was about to use his father's blood essence, Paimon suddenly turned his head and looked at the center of the fortress. Ursula merely glanced at him indifferently before he slowly extended his hand. Swoosh! The dark clouds were torn apart. The sky was torn apart. A dazzling white light appeared in front of everyone. Then, a huge hand made of holy light that was tens of thousands of meters long appeared before everyone's eyes. Paimon's body grew bigger again. He was now 10,000 meters tall. But to the holy light giant hand that was also growing in size, he was like a tiny dot. Bang! The entire heaven and earth trembled. Paimon, who was 10,000 meters tall, was slapped deep into the ground. Then, the huge hand made a few palm strikes. Palm, palm, palm. 3 seconds later, heaven and earth wailed. Within a radius of 1 million kilometers, there was a rain of blood. Countless dark creatures were crying. The Lord of Darkness, he had perished. William looked deeply at Ursula and then at the distant sky. He could not help but mutter, "I wonder how much blood will rain in the two worlds today." Chapter 6:13. The vanguard mission of the 10th outpost of the legendary continent did not last for long. The mission was declared a failure after the two Lords of Darkness were captured and killed. Millions of dark creatures fled in all directions. Most of the dark creatures that escaped were low-level dark creatures. Even if the legendary, epic, and grandmaster devils wanted to escape, they had to depend on the 40-meter-long sword in William's hand. William had hammered Agar's head, but Agar's did not perish. Instead, he was completely controlled. William did not intend to continue using soul control. He only wanted to squeeze Agar's dry before killing him personally. Or, how about selling it? William had heard that some sage demon hunters were interested in it. However, such a crushing victory did not happen in every outpost. On this day, there were a total of 70 outposts, and 13 outposts could not even withstand the first wave of siege. According to statistics, there were 13 million warriors who died in these 13 outposts. Among them, 303 were epic professionals, 69 were legendary professionals, and 8 were sages. Among them were Seraphican, humans, elves, and dwarf sages from other continents. According to the ratio, the number of sages who died was the highest. This was one of the 13 outposts, and the legendary continent occupied one of them. That was one of the outposts that the Frost Empire was responsible for. After they arrived, they were besieged by 4 Lords of Darkness. 3 of their teleportation portals were immediately destroyed, causing them to fall into a state of isolation and helplessness. Seeing that there was no hope, the Wood Saint Tree Lord self-destructed to create a temporary small world in the Dark World. This allowed the land within a radius of several hundred kilometers to instantly grow into a boundless forest. There was also an extremely powerful barrier. This gave the other space warlock saint the opportunity to create a space door and allowed the remaining nearly 1 million soldiers to escape. It was precisely because the sages of various races fought with their lives that more than half of the professionals in the 13 outposts survived. If the sages did not fight with their lives, the 26 million professionals would have all died here. As to whether they should preserve the top combat power of the legendary level or let the remaining 13 million professionals die, no one would argue about this, because the sages were not gods. Only with civilization, a prosperous society, and a sufficient number of professionals could more saints be born. In fact, even the gods of the world of gods had feelings. It was just that the emotions of saints were stronger. That was because they weren't born in the legendary realm. They had all become strong step by step from being weak, and then slowly stepped into the saint realm. Only then did they become the guardian of a race, an empire, or a camp. And since he was a guardian god, they naturally understood the meaning of these 3 words better than anyone else. They chose to ignore the pressure brought about by the darkness invasion. They could ignore the darkness world. They only wanted to guard their home and prevent the darkness creatures from invading. But when they really chose to fight, this group of powerhouses with endless lifespans knew better than anyone else. This was war. This was a war between 2 continents. This was no trifling matter. It was precisely because the saints knew that the war between the 2 continents would be cruel that they would reject it and use all sorts of perfunctory methods to play along with the light pope. After all, they understood if the war really broke out, sainthood did not mean invincibility. As for the saints who had grown up from being weak, they could not ignore the fact that fresh lives were dying in front of them, while they themselves had to escape. This was because the people they brought had the same bloodline as them, spoke the same language, and had similar appearances. The tens of millions of living beings were their clansmen, warriors under their command, and fresh lives that had stepped into the abyss according to their orders. These saints could not abandon them so easily. On the second day of the outpost, there were still 32 outposts that were still engaged in a tug-of-war. The other outposts were either defeated or won, and had a short respite. There were many reasons for this. For example, the Darkness Lord did not want to take the initiative to attack, or there was only one Darkness Lord attacking the outpost. Hence, the aimless tug-of-war could only continue. And there was one outpost that did not encounter any attacks at all. They had already begun to explore the darkness world and collect all sorts of resources. They were like the children of the goddess of luck. The other outposts were like adopted children, and they even had a vicious stepmother who could beat them to death. At this moment, William had already dispelled the state of God's arrival. He only knew so much information in Ursula's room. But he could not help but ask, "How many Darkness Lords have died?" Ursula was the commander-in-chief of the outpost in the legendary continent. He knew a lot of things. This eternal second-in-command glanced at him. "A total of 13 Darkness Lords have died in battle, and 3 have been captured, including the one in your hand. It's a bit of a loss." William scratched his head. A total of 8 saints had died in battle in the 7 continents, but they had only exchanged for 15 Darkness Lords. No matter how he looked at it, it was a loss. At least you have some foresight. We really did not gain anything." Ursula sighed. He opened the 3-dimensional map in the crystal ball. This was a map of resources within a radius of 1,000 kilometers of the 10th outpost. He continued, "Actually, after the Age of Gods, the combat power of the darkness world was far less than that of the gods' continent. But now there are more Darkness Lords. Because the most important thing is that although there are many wars in the darkness world, at least there is a darkness god secretly controlling it. There is no race war that is enough to destroy the world. But our god's continent is different. Let's not talk about the mythological era. Everyone is the plaything of the gods. We can't compare our happiness, we can only compare our misery. But the Great Dragon era brought a great disaster to our major races. This group of beasts ate everything. Who knows how many creatures with outstanding potential died in the mouths of the dragon race. Many sage seeds died in their mouth. And the Elven era was invaded by the darkness world. In addition to the world-destroying war between the humans and the elves, the entire gods' continent was torn apart. Many sages died. Now, because the training system has matured, there are more and more sages in the gods' continent. But the Darkness Lords are not too far behind. If not for the fact that the attributes of the Darkness Lords are relatively simple and most of them are of the Darkness attribute, we have many ways to restrain them in terms of high-end combat power. Otherwise, the gods' continent would have long been occupied by the dark creatures. William was originally looking at the 3-dimensional map, but in the end, he realized that Ursula had said many things that no one knew. But he still could not help but ask, the Pope of Light, why didn't he do anything to suppress them? Would he dare? The God of Darkness is still not dead, and it is very likely that he will descend at any time. If he dares to kill all the Darkness Lords, the God of Darkness will dare to kill all the sages of the various races after his rebirth. When that time comes, what can he do even if he is a transcendent sage? Ursula rolled his eyes and sighed. The burden on him is too heavy, especially when he is not only facing the God of Darkness. All the Lord gods that have not reincarnated are existences that he has to deal with. William was silent. He had Odin's memories. He knew that the gods that had not reincarnated still had not given up on the plan to rule the world. And Ursula explained again. But because of this, he wants to think of ways to increase the fate of the various races. One of the best ways is to fight for the fate of the continent. By occupying the darkness continent, he can increase the overall fate of the gods' continent. From then on, more sages will be born, and even more sages will be born. Then, he will use this to resist the era of the gods' descent. How is it? Isn't it a very grand plan? Yes, I feel that the Pope can be more arrogant. It would be best if he can prevent our sages from dying. William joked. Get lost. Don't be insatiable with your words. Ursula was not interested in arguing with him. You have already memorized the map. If you have nothing to do, don't loiter around here. I'm leaving. Goodbye." His Royal Highness did not continue to argue with him, and just left. In fact, his main purpose was to get a map of resources from him. If there were no accidents, these resource maps, they should have been discovered by the devils who were in the Chow camp but had their hearts in the Han camp. This included Daniel, who had become the Darkness Lord. But this outpost did not only have the City of Dawn and the Temple of Light. There were also the Dwarfs, the Commerce Alliance, and many other forces here. The distribution of resources within 1,000 kilometers was limited. Ursula could see that William had killed a Darkness Lord and give him many resource points within 100 kilometers. As for the rest, William had to find them himself. Very soon, he faced the dusky sky and flew to the war conference room of the City of Dawn. He immediately summoned Burned Cinder, Sarimas, and many other epic professionals. William drew out the map from his memory and said, "Our outpost has killed 2 Darkness Lords. In a short period of time, we definitely won't encounter a large-scale attack. Logically speaking, even if the Darkness Lords replace them, it will take a long time for them to take over their territories. Even if they take over the territories, they might not launch an all-out attack. At most, they will try to contain us and probe us on a small scale. Because we won the first battle, it is equivalent to putting a nail in the coffin. But they will definitely not let us collect resources in peace. I have obtained a resource map from Ursula. There are 3 mithril mines, 6 fire crystal mines, 2 orichalcum mines, 8 black crystal mines, 1 magical crystal mine, and 2 magical crystal mines. We have to excavate all of them within this period of time. You can distribute these tasks among yourselves. Do I have to say more?" "Understood, Your Highness." Many legendary and epic professionals responded in unison. "Then distribute them. Distribute all the Earth Element mages as well. If the number of Earth Element mages is insufficient, mobilize more from the City of Dawn. Oh yes, Wendy, you are in charge of building a teleportation portal near the mines. It will connect here and then teleport to the City of Dawn." "Yes." Wendy, who was dressed in purple magic, nodded. "Also, find some enchanters to explore the undiscovered resource points." At this point, William suddenly thought of something. He said in a rare gentler tone, "Get the water and wood mages and enchanters to plant as many trees as possible in the city as possible. Create a river or something. Also, try to create a barrier to maintain the pure air. After all, the warriors are risking their lives to fight. The logistics services have to be in place. Otherwise, all they see is lava and the fiery red sky." Many people had smiles on their faces. In fact, they also knew that this group of 1 million soldiers stationed in the military fortress, if there were no special circumstances, it would be very difficult for them to return to the God's continent. Because as time passed, they would become veterans in the conquest of the Dark World. They would lead batches of new recruits to survive here and teach them the experience that they had gained by risking their lives. They were treasures. It would be very difficult for them to leave the Dark World alive. Old? Would they have the chance to grow old here? William seemed to know what they were thinking. But the ring of reincarnation in his hands had already collected the souls of 180,000 people. If his warriors did not live to grow old, then William would let them be reborn in the World Tree. Chapter 6:14. While the outpost was not attacked by the Dark Army, William stepped into the teleportation portal and arrived at the City of Dawn. He had just returned home. The sound of cannons came from the south. William flew high into the sky and discovered that the Dawn fleet could easily defend against the incoming sea monsters. After all, they had a powerful weapon like the mana gatling. These unintelligent sea monsters would only be sending themselves to their death. William was not too worried about them. Even though the City of Dawn had sent a large number of soldiers to the Dark World, there were still 1 million soldiers left behind. Most of them were stationed in other cities and carrying out mercenary missions. The beast tide seemed difficult to stop. But it depended on the power. William had thought that it would be difficult to stop the sea beast. But now, he discovered that the City of Dawn had become a powerful force. It was difficult to deal with the other powers. There were only about 200,000 soldiers of the Dawn Navy stationed along the coast. Together with Douglet, Captain Jack, and Paul, who was at the peak of the legendary realm, they were the first line of defense that they couldn't break. Of course, if the deep sea race dared to send out a sage expert, William did not mind letting him enter and be sold away. Subsequently, he went to the forbidden area of the Rainbow Lake alone. The World Tree was currently 3,500 meters tall. In half a year, it would reach a height of 4,000 meters. Even if it grows slower in the later stages of the game version update, it should still reach a height of 6,000 to 7,000 meters. After the third magic revival, it will grow even faster. William stroked his chin. If it could reach such a height, it would be equivalent to a majestic mountain peak. The branches of the World Tree were lush. Every branch was thick and long, giving people the feeling that they were growing. Under normal circumstances, it was impossible to hold them with one's hands. I should be able to build a house on the World Tree. It's a pity that it's not the time to reveal itself. William thought. The telepathy of the World Tree took effect. He immediately sprouted branches and leaves at the highest point, forming an exquisite and magnificent treehouse. He said proudly, "Do you like it?" William's eyes lit up and he nodded. "Yes, build a few more beside me. There are other people who want to live there." The World Tree fell into deep thought. It was just William and William, but he wanted to find a bunch of people to occupy it? Damn. Perverted. But the World Tree obediently sprouted some treehouses. It was very simple and did not consume much energy. It was just changing the shape of the branches. Meanwhile, William took out the ring of reincarnation and said, "I will put these 180,000 souls into your body. From now on, the 10,000 elves that are born every month will use these souls. Can you do that?" When the World Tree heard this, its branches and leaves couldn't help but dance. It said happily, "That's great. If you can provide enough souls, I can even give birth to 20,000 elves every month. In fact, their bodies won't consume too much of my energy. Souls are the most complicated things. But you must know that the souls you provide are all very powerful and complete. They all have their own origin power. I cannot guarantee that they will be loyal to you after they are born." The prince's eyes flashed with a trace of nostalgia. He smiled and said, "They are all my warriors. They died on the battlefield. I don't have a hall of Valhalla for them to enjoy, so I can only let them live again." "All right." The World Tree shook its huge body and nodded. Once again, William arrived at the expanding pocket world. All the elves born from the World Tree lived in this small world that was comparable to a human kingdom. At this moment, the area of the small world was still expanding along with the growth of the World Tree. Many creatures, animals, and magical beasts from the mythological era were also constantly growing. William even saw a cyclops. It was incredible. Obviously, the small world born from the World Tree was far more powerful than other small world. Not only were there more species, but they were also rarer. He even suspected that after countless years of growth, the small world that was controlled by the elves had given birth to great dragons, behemoths, and other creatures. The World Tree had experienced many eras. William couldn't imagine how big the small world would be. It might even be comparable to a legendary continent or even larger. If that was the case, it would be a real world. Even if the World Tree was destroyed, the small world would be torn apart. The small world was also torn apart. Even if some of the elves living in the small world were attacked, they should be able to preserve a lot of their strength. William narrowed his eyes. The elves of the Second Era fought against the Dark Army for more than 800 years. Many sages and elves died in battle. But according to the wisdom of a large race, they are definitely not fools. That means they have a greater intention. The prince sucked in a breath of cold air. He suddenly thought of something. Had the elves already predicted that they would decline in the second era? Had they retreated to the small world in a way that looked as if both sides had suffered great losses and were defeated by the human race? Had they only displayed a small portion of their strength in the gods' continent and pretended to drag out an ignoble existence? It was possible. The elves of the second era were too powerful. They had the most sages in the entire continent. It was possible that no one could predict the fate of the elves. But their only miscalculation was that the world tree had been destroyed. No. William shook his head again. He clenched his fists and inhaled a breath of cold air. He muttered to himself, "In my previous life, the coordinates of the world tree were revealed. The Seraphian, humans, elves, and dwarves fought over it. But in the end, it was taken away by an unknown force. No one knew which side that force belonged to before I died. But no one could predict the location of the world tree. Could it be that the elves took it away and hid it in the small world? And those small worlds were born from the world tree in the first place. Perhaps the world tree can use them as nutrients and grow extremely quickly." William was stunned. In addition, during the meeting at the Temple of Light, Ursula had told Bernice that the elves had many hidden sages. Was it difficult to defend against a city? If that was the case, the elves' plan was not small. They had many hidden trump cards in the small world. Simply put, besides the foolish humans, the Seraphian and the elves had hidden a lot of their strength. But the humans did not need more sages. They only needed the Supreme Pontiff of Light to be safe. William slapped his face. He turned his gaze to the city in front of him. The Elven City. There were 140,000 elves living in this city. In just over a year, some female elves were pregnant, and the second generation of elves was about to be born. William did not disturb these little fellows. When they saw him, they would stop what they were doing and bow to him. The prince casually sat on a tree trunk and quietly watched the carefree elves. They were carefree. Most of the elves were learning and training. After they were born, they were adult. But their minds were as blank as a piece of paper. William did not want these elves to go astray. He had to let them understand the true meaning of life. Therefore, listen to the Lord's words. Version 313 was the introductory reading for these elves. As for how to teach them to read and write, William did not have the time to experience it. He might as well flirt with Goddess Momo. He was about to become an adult. But he was too lazy to teach them personally. He could only find 2 epic mentors from the Battle Energy College and Magic College to teach these elves personally. As for the consequences, before William could make the world tree reveal itself, the 2 epic professionals would not appear in the gods' continent again. This was to prevent the warlock sage from predicting the existence of the world tree. Don't be fooled by the fact that it was a life of confinement and a huge workload. It could not be helped. The 2 of them had to teach hundreds of thousands of elves. They would definitely go crazy from exhaustion. But William's rewards for these 2 epic professionals were not small. He gave them 500 drops of life potion and magic source. It was enough for them to stay here for 1,000 years without thinking of leaving. Moreover, William had said that as long as they could become sages, he would allow them to enter and leave freely. Then, he would get more mentors to help them. As such, the 2 epic professions naturally worked hard. They actually understood the prince's talent in training. It was unbelievably fast. Of course, they could not be fast in certain aspects. They had to be slow, but extremely slow. William looked around for a while and then left the small world. The adult elves cultivated very quickly, but in just over a year, the strongest one had only become an advanced professional. There was still a long way to go before he became a grandmaster. But it did not matter. The City of Dawn was rich and had many soldiers. It was not the time to use them. They still had a long time to train. It's boring. William yawned as he walked on the street. Many young girls and married women could not help but lick their lips when they saw this scene. William was not that kind of person. Naturally, he was not interested in doing anything with these young ladies. He took out a magic transmission scroll and sent a message to someone. 30 seconds later. Beep, 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 beep. What's that? Dark Lord? Alive? How much? No, what do you want? Beep, beep, beep. Gosh, there's finally a second cutie. I'll buy him. Beep, beep, beep. Come quickly. Otherwise, I'll go to the City of Dawn. Beep, beep, beep. Very soon. 7 sage demon hunters sent messages at the same time. They wanted to buy agars, who had been squeezed dry, at a high price. William raised his eyebrows in surprise. He had only sent a message to one person. Did all of them know about it? Gosh. What were they doing together? What did they mean by there was finally a second cutie? Gonlin, did you dare to tell me the truth? This was the first time William knew that there were 7 sages in the Demon Hunter Guild. D*MN. You guys were really beasts. Such a powerful force could become a superpower in the gods' continent. But you guys were always thinking about the darkness divine item? Damn. Perverted. Come to think of it, this group of fellows who did not take the initiative to attack the Dark World performed very well in the gods' continent. In the future, after the third darkness invasion was launched, the shadows of the Demon Hunter Guild could be seen everywhere in the gods' continent. Their frequent activities were more frequent than any of the light forces. Chapter 6:15. The Demon Hunter Union was located in most of the cities on the 7 continents. The number of its members was beyond imagination. The rules of the Demon Hunter Union were very simple. Any professional could register. Even if one was a member of the City of Dawn, the Temple of Light, or a general of the human empires, one could become a demon hunter. The rules of the Demon Hunter Union were very few. Almost none. The exorcism and demon hunting missions were optional. Even if one did not do it, others would do it. Every time a mission was completed, one could hand over the captured and killed dark creatures to the Demon Hunter Union in exchange for training resources. Otherwise, he could leave his prey behind. Basically, no one would care about it. The Demon Hunter Union was very wealthy and had many powerful professionals, but they rarely participated in the battles on the continent. He only focused on dealing with the dark creatures. Of course, this referred to the 7 sage demon hunters. They were very simple in their thinking, or rather, they had a single goal. Other than dealing with the dark creatures, they did not care about anything else. This led to the Demon Hunter Union rarely participating in battles. William did not intend to let the demon hunters come to the City of Dawn, especially since the 7 sages were present. He decided to go to the headquarters of the Demon Hunter Union personally. He wanted to have a good chat with them. Oh yes, where is their headquarters? William scratched his head. Then, he entered the teleportation portal and arrived at the war-ending empire. Then, he changed his appearance and aura. Then, he arrived at the most remote southeast corner of the Eastern City District. This was an important branch of the Demon Hunter Union in the war-ending empire. But the geographical location was very remote. In William's previous life, the players had discussed that it was because the land was relatively cheap. That was why it was so inconspicuous. However, the area occupied by the Demon Hunters Union here was very large because many retired demon hunters also lived here. Oh, this group of professional demon hunters seemed to like to gather together when they were old. The Demon Hunter Union was also very supportive. Perhaps it was because they were afraid of the dark creature's revenge. William soon arrived at the intersection of the alleyway. When the pedestrians passed by, they basically stayed far away from him. When he was about to step into the alley, a young lady shouted anxiously from afar, "Brother, don't go in. There are demons inside." Her childhood sweetheart was stunned. He looked at the young girl's infatuated gaze and suddenly felt an inexplicable pain in his heart. He wanted to say, "We've known each other for so many years," but you've never called me little older brother. This brother in front of me, well, you are more handsome than me. But do you really need to look at me like that? The prince turned around and chuckled. Don't be afraid. I'm a powerful professional. You should go home. Ding dong. Prompt. XXX's affinity towards you has increased by 800 points. Subsequently, William hurriedly took a step forward, afraid that the girl behind him would chase after him. However, he could already hear the girl crying. It was as if she had lost her lover. Her childhood sweetheart who had been cuckolded could not be comforted no matter what she did after he entered. He discovered that there was indeed a barrier at the entrance of the alley, and it even blocked the aura of darkness that was being emitted. The dark aura in this area was so dense that ordinary civilians didn't dare to approach it. Meanwhile, a female human with an impressive figure wearing purple leather armor also walked in. No, this female assassin was not human, because she had pointed cat ears on her head. She seemed to be a half-human half-beastman. TSK. It was too rare. There were half-beastmen in the gods' continent, but they weren't the anti-human kind. Usually, humans and magical beasts that had transformed into human forms would engage in certain activities to give birth to half-beastmen. Everyone understood. Hence, William involuntarily sized her up. TSK. What a fierce woman. But the cat ears were indeed quite cute. He didn't expect that such half-beastmen would be in the Demon Hunter Union. But then again, the members of the Demon Hunter Union were more complicated, and there were many messy races among them. But the cat-child assassin seemed to have noticed his gaze. She puffed up her big chest and shouted, "What are you looking at? Haven't you seen a woman wearing clothes before?" The prince's mouth twitched. Damn it. She was indeed a female demon hunter. Her words were as if she was racing a car. But then again, he had seen women wearing clothes before. He had never seen a cat girl without clothes before. He did not want to bother with this epic assassin. Just as he was about to speed up, the female assassin pulled William back and looked at him cautiously. She sniffed and said in a deep voice, "Wait, there's something wrong with the dark aura on your body. I think you're here to cause trouble, aren't you?" Then the catgirl assassin couldn't help but move closer to his chest and sniff with her small nose. In the next moment, the catgirl assassin's expression changed drastically, and she retreated a few steps in fear. Her legs trembled as she shouted, "You save me! The Lord of Darkness is coming. Brothers and sisters, hide the big treasure and quickly run away." Gosh, what dog knows? William's speed was very fast. He hurriedly locked her in place and covered her mouth so that she wouldn't shout and scream. But with this move, the prince could feel the sexy figure of the catgirl. She was really too big. In addition, the aura that the Lord of Darkness had left on her body scared the catgirl to the point that she didn't dare to move. She allowed William to lock her up. In particular, Melandha discovered that her strength was like that of a baby in front of the man in front of her. Since she couldn't resist, she would just enjoy it. It was a pity. Before William could teach her a lesson and let her know that she was a human, and a male human at that, many figures appeared in the surroundings. Epic, Grandmaster, and even legendary professionals appeared. One of the male legendary professionals was furious when he saw this scene. Let her go. Where did this legendary professional come from? How dare you bully a woman from our guild? You're courting death. William raised his eyebrows and placed a hand on Melandha's head. While rubbing her ears, he removed the seal on her face and aura. Then he said, "The Lord of the City of Dawn has been invited to the headquarters of the Demon Hunter Guild." The male legendary professional's expression changed. But when he saw that Melandha was rubbing her ears and seemed to be enjoying it, he clenched his fists and wanted to say something harsh. But the person in front of him was the Lord of the City of Dawn. It was true. It was absolutely true. Because they had never seen such a handsome man, especially when his face returned to its original appearance, who knew how many people were dumbfounded. William ignored the prompt on the attribute panel. Sigh. He had to endure the affection points from countless ladies every day. The pressure was too great. He really just wanted to live a simple, unpretentious, low-key, and ordinary life. But his appearance did not allow him to do so. William noticed that the crowd was speechless, or perhaps they didn't dare to speak. So, he said, I've captured a Lord of Darkness. I intend to buy his head, so my body is tainted with the aura. Is there a need to stop me? Lord of Darkness? Yes, I heard that 2 Lord of Darkness at the 10th outpost have been defeated. One of them was subdued by the Lord of the City of Dawn. Someone gasped. He's too strong. Why didn't the man in front of me capture me? A female demon hunter mumbled while drooling. Ahem, mind your tone. Lord of the City of Dawn, please come this way. Another legendary professional walked out. He seemed to have received the message, so he came to entertain William personally. William smiled and strode forward. However, Melinda grabbed his hand and placed it on her head again. She seemed to enjoy the feeling. You're still clinging to me? The prince shrugged nonchalantly, stroked her little ear, and continued to walk forward, leaving behind a group of stunned demon hunters and an envious, jealous, and hateful legendary bootlicker. Soon, William was led to the teleportation portal by a staff member. He turned to look at Melinda. Why? Do you want to follow me? Yes. My name is Melinda. Can I follow you? I like your scent. Melinda said bitterly while grabbing William's right hand tightly. The prince raised an eyebrow. An epic-ranked assassin was a free gift. It would be a waste not to take it. However, when he glanced at the teleportation gate, Melinda immediately transformed into a purple kitten and lay obediently in his arms. Forget it. I'll bring you along. Don't scream, okay? William stroked her chin. Melinda squinted her eyes and nodded comfortably. Then, he stepped into the teleportation portal. After an unknown period of time. When he walked out again, he found that he was inside a huge space. The sky was blue and the sun was bright. There were few pedestrians on the street. But when they saw William, they were very cautious, as if they were guarding against something. William's mouth twitched. He had no time to steal their babies. Why did they look at him like that? He was going to beat them up. He looked around and found that the houses in this alternate dimension were dim. Most of them were made of obsidian, and there were very few green plants. Even if there were plants, they were filled with dark elements. Or rather, the dark elements in the entire dimension were very rich. William, you're finally here. What's up? Are you curious about the abundance of darkness elements here? You're just worried that the babies are living in discomfort. I've already sealed them. Without the darkness elements, they'll die. William avoided the arm around his old friend's shoulder. That was right. This was the Gerlog that he had known for a period of time. He was one of the veterans of the Demon Hunter Union. Gerlog was a sage expert. He had a good impression of William because of the large number of vampires and dark creatures in the City of Dawn. He did not care about the difference in power levels between them. Now that he had personally captured a Dark Lord, Gerlog had a good impression of William. In the next second, many sage demon hunters appeared at the same time. They smiled and looked at William, as if they were waiting for him to bring out the Dark Lord. The kitten in William's arms was very scared. It kept burrowing into William's arms. It only calmed down when it burrowed into his clothes. When William saw their malicious gazes, he coughed and said, "This is not a good place to talk. I spent a lot of effort to capture this guy, especially since he's a living Dark Lord. You should know how much he's worth, right? Hurry up. It's just an auction. Hurry up." One of the sages could not hold it in any longer. He immediately pulled William into their secret house. Once they entered, the prince's eyes widened in shock. Yes, he was a very special kind of person, a very rare kind. Yes, it was the feeling of a granny entering a grand garden. It caused every cell in his body to express shock. Chapter 6:16. How many dark creatures were there in the dark world? The Temple of Light did not give an accurate answer. But when he entered the secret room, he saw the slogan Dark Creatures, 3241/5320. Then, he had completely fallen into a state of extreme shock. This secret room seemed to have spatial properties. It looked small from the outside, but it was very big inside. Both sides of the entrance were filled with dark creatures sealed in jars. There was a giant dark lizard sleeping on its stomach. There were skeleton soldiers with bone knives in their hands staring at them covetously. There were also skeleton soldiers with all kinds of ghostly flames in their eyes. It was like a rainbow skeleton girl group. The Death Knight, Dark Knight, and Headless Knight formed a group. The dark giant had shrunk to the size of a palm. Or rather, the jar itself had spatial properties. William looked down. The little guy wanted to jump up and hit his knee, but it could not even break the jar. Then, there were various kinds of dark creatures that William could not name. In this corridor, William saw hundreds of different kinds of dark creatures. Next, he came to the room of the secret room. There were also various jars. But in this small room, there were all kinds of devils, balrogs, succubi, dretches, hunter spiders, berserker demons, judgment demons, and so on. In short, all the devils in the dark world were in this small room. They were like the decorations in a noble's house. They were placed everywhere. Most importantly, they were still alive. Jared glanced at William's gaze and laughed. "We're tired of these things. Let me show you the big treasure of the 7 of us." The prince swallowed his saliva. But he did not dare to refuse. He could only follow the 7 sages into the slightly dark basement. There was a mysterious magical door in this basement. The president of the Demon Hunter Guild threw out thousands of magic runes to slowly open the door. It was enough to show how much importance he attached to the thing behind the door. At that moment, the lights were bright. Various pink furniture, carpets, and even beds appeared in front of William. It did not look like a basement at all. Instead, it looked more like a noble lady's bedroom. And sitting on the bed was a black, dark lord dressed in white silk and a pink dress? Pfft! The prince couldn't hold it in and choked on his own saliva. He coughed violently. This Lord of Darkness was not a female, but a king male. However, he seemed to have taken some kind of medicine that caused his body to be slightly smaller. When the King of Darkness heard the voice, he just stared blankly at him for a moment before lowering his head to look at his legs like a pitiful doll, making people unable to help but feel a sense of pity. No. Only a demon hunter would have such a feeling. However, there was no need to worry too much. This King of Darkness had hundreds of seals on his body, causing him to be like a weak and powerless woman. However, there was clearly no one here just now. Why didn't he take off his skirt and stockings and restore his manly nature? Well, this was a question worth pondering. And after thinking about it deeply, I realized that he had been completely toyed with. Oh, my weak heart seems to have been bombarded by nuclear weapons. William clutched his chest. He could no longer look at the Lord of Darkness or the 7 sages. But it was okay. The 7 holy seat bigwigs didn't care about his gaze at all. The president, who looked like an old man, even walked up to White Silk with a smile. He touched White Silk's thigh and comforted her. "Lilith, don't be afraid. We'll find you a companion today. Remember to be good." The Lord of Darkness named Lilith's body trembled, but she did not resist. She allowed the sages to do whatever they wanted to her. It was not that she did not want to resist, and it was not that she did not resist. But the price of resisting was unbearable. She would even squat in a corner and cry silently. It was true. She had lived for so many years, but ever since she had been captured by them, she had suffered more grievances in the past 100 years than she had lived for 10,000 years. At this moment, Jared laughed. "William, take out your Lord of Darkness. It's time for the auction." "Okay, let's go somewhere else." William gulped. He almost crushed the space scroll to escape. But what made him despair was that among the 7 sages, there was not only a space Grand Mage Sage, but there was also a time Grand Mage Sage, Gan Lin Yang. It was no wonder that the Lord of Darkness did not even have the chance to escape. Faced with such a powerful group of 7, how could he escape? Unless he could reach the peak of the sage level. But William also felt that Jarrag, who was a spirit-type sage who specialized in both combat and magic, seemed to be at the peak of the sage level. Very soon, they arrived at a conference hall. William was not afraid that they would snatch it. After all, they were sage experts, and they could not do such a shameless thing. He directly took out the sealed and bound agars from the alternate dimension. Dirty, dirty. Agars struggled frantically, but his mouth was sealed. Every part of his body was bound by chains, and his cultivation was completely sealed. He could only keep rolling on the ground. He had no power to resist. Of course, William's sealing technique was still a little inferior to these big shots. It was called artistic play, but William's was like a pig being slaughtered. That's too violent. How can you deal with this little cutie like this? Come, come, let Uncle untie the chains for you. An earth element warrior walked over with a disdainful gait. Agars turned his head to look at the 7 burly men, whose eyes were flickering. He immediately started howling dirty. Like a mudfish, he crazily rolled on the ground in front of William. He wished that William could tie him up and seal him in an alternate dimension. He did not want to fall into the hands of these sage demon hunters. Other things aside, in the dark world, one could not know about the Temple of Light. But one must know about the Demon Hunter Union, because to humans the dark world was hell on earth. But to devils, the Demon Hunter Union was the devil's hell. However, they knew that they were useless, because they never entered the dark world to look for trouble. They would only use all kinds of methods to catch the lone devils and take them in. Some of the devils who escaped, even if they could return to the dark world, would often commit suicide because they could not bear the memories, or find an expert to seal their past experiences. It was simple. The Tai Chi bar was terrifying. Hence, William stepped on him and chuckled. Maybe you don't know, but he's Agars, one of the 72 devil gods, ranked 2nd. He's very famous in the dark world. You'll have a good reputation if you talk about him. Although he's a berserker demon, look. William lifted Agars up as if he was selling pork. He pointed at the flesh on his chest, waist, and arms. His soft and tender skin, and his not-so-rough appearance, are the best in the dark world. The key is that he's a sage, which means that he has almost indestructible mental strength. I guarantee that you'll be satisfied for a long time. Agars was stunned. Could it be that the sage had almost indestructible mental strength? Was it used for this? F***ck your grandpa. Dirty, dirty. The Dark Lord shook his body frantically, as if he wanted to fight with William. Jarrag touched the white hair on his head and licked his lip. He looked at Agars carefully and nodded in agreement. It makes sense. His mental state is much better than Lilith. What do you think? The Time Warlock Saint stroked his chin and said thoughtfully, well, let's give Lilith a vacation. He is only 9 meters tall, and the muscles on his body are not too explosive. As long as he uses a little potion, he will definitely become very soft. He will be much stronger than Lilith. When that time comes, he will definitely feel very good. Look, did you see the look in his eyes? It's like he's about to cry. Oh my God, I really like that look in his eyes. The feeling of conquest is so strong. Then, let the auction officially begin. William did not know why these people wanted to auction separately when they could play together. Could it be that? Did they want to monopolize a Dark Lord so that they could have a greater sense of conquest? That was possible. William could not guess the thoughts of the sage demon hunters. 5 mithril veins, 5 orichalcum veins, 5 adamantine veins, 3 magical stone veins, 3 magical crystal veins, and 3 warrior armors for legendary professions. They are of the metal, wood, and water elements respectively, the time mage saint said immediately. William's expression changed slightly. Gosh, there were a few rich ones. Actually, the ore veins that they mentioned were not unmined. They were just a rough estimate. The time warlock saint was indeed a rich man. His words dealt a blow to many saint demon hunters, and 3 of them looked desolate. After all, no matter how valuable the Dark Lord was, they could not exchange it with divine and sacred weapons, right? But don't forget that there was still the oldest person here. He was the founder of the Demon Hunter Guild, Vesemir. The old man squinted his eyes and laughed. He immediately increased the number of ore veins by 1, and he also added 2 pieces of legendary armor. He was definitely a super-rich tycoon. The prince was tempted because Agars had long been skinned by him. Apart from killing him for some EXP, it was far better to sell him for some resources. But he blinked his eyes greedily. Are there any more? Really? If there's no more, I'll hand over this sage position is eternal, and the Dark Lord is eternal treasure to the guild leader. 3, 2, wait a minute, Jarrag shouted. The Demon Hunter Guild leader, Vesemir, glanced at Jarrag, and the latter coughed dryly. I'm sorry, teacher. Lilith is your private collection. You can only let us play with her when you're happy. But I really want to have my own Dark Lord. I'll offer a treasure that I made myself, which is a sage-level soul weapon. William's eyes widened. The other sages were also dumbfounded. Soul weapon. What was that? That was a life. Chapter 6:17. When it came to soul tools, Voldemort had to be mentioned. Of course. He was an antique character in a 21st century novel and did not have much to do with this soul tool. However, the 2 of them had the same effect through different means. That was, the existence of each soul tool was equivalent to giving the holder an extra life. As for the way to use it, it was much more complicated. It was certainly not like what Voldemort had done in the past, where the soul was directly cut into several pieces and stuffed into various soul tools. If William wanted to completely use this soul tool, he needed to inject soul power into it day and night for a long time. Only when it had the same amount of soul power as his own could he use it. But no one wanted to use a soul tool, because it was equivalent to a resurrection. That was, at the moment when the user's soul was about to dissipate, the soul power in this soul tool would appear out of thin air in the body, allowing the user to resurrect on the spot. The effect was very strong. But the side effects were not small. A person could only have 2 soul tools at most. If there were more, the source of the soul would be severely damaged, which was not conducive to breaking through. Especially for a sage. As long as the soul did not dissipate, the physical body could not completely die, no matter how badly it was beaten. Just like Agars's head had been smashed by William, it still depended on time to slowly recover. And in this case, the importance of the soul was self-evident. But the way to make a soul tool was very difficult, and the materials needed were very rare. In the entire world, except for soul and spirit-type sages who could make it, no one else could. But even so, without the support of other sages or large forces, a soul and spirit-type sage could at most gather 1 or 2 soul tools for his own use. So this thing had become a priceless treasure. The martial sage probably had one too. This might also be one of the reasons his father did not kill him. That was because the martial sage knew that he could not beat Roger's Lucky. Even if he could resurrect, he would probably abandon his physical body and use his soul to resurrect in a faraway place. He would not even have the thought of fighting back. But when William killed him in the future, even if this guy died, he might resurrect and fight again, and then die again, for this kind of treasure. William had no reason to refuse. He immediately threw Agars, who was in despair, over. He also received the soul tool that looked like a pearl. Worth it! What a killing! Both of them revealed lascivious smiles at the same time and looked at each other. Their eyes were full of admiration, as if they were lamenting that the number of such people was too small. Just as William was about to leave this obscure place and slip away, the other people's faces were full of smiles. The men on his left and right blocked his way. He was stopped, yes, in particular, the Earth-type battle saint was still swaying his muscular body as he said with a smile, "William, don't go. My house is quite big, and there are many things in the room that you haven't seen before. Holy sh*t. At this moment, William's heart turned cold. He quickly swallowed his saliva and hurriedly said, No, my mother has already prepared dinner. She's waiting for me to go home for dinner. By the way, I heard that my father is also coming home. He will definitely be anxious if he doesn't see me." As soon as he finished speaking, the Earth-type battle saint's expression changed, and he quickly coughed lightly. "Oh, then you should hurry home. Boys should also be careful when they go out. Don't forget to send our regards to Rogers. Goodbye, I'm leaving." His Royal Highness turned and ran. But after he left, the Earth-type battle saint laughed mischievously. "This guy is very cautious. What's wrong with you? Why did you scare him?" "It's because he's good-looking. I've never seen such a handsome man. I almost couldn't control myself. But what if he captures the Lord of Darkness in the future and doesn't sell him to us?" Hiss! The Earth-type battle saint inhaled a breath of cold air. He had almost forgotten about this matter. He hurriedly sent out a few transmission scrolls. But he discovered MMP. There was no signal. Jarrag helplessly glanced at him and could only roll his eyes as he scolded, "Damn, it's all because of those sons of B** cheese under us that ruined our reputation." Yes, and you too. What was wrong with the Demon Hunter Union? It was not a large gay union. Why were the outsiders so afraid of it? "We are only targeting the dark creatures." Someone sighed. At this moment, many people's expressions did not look too good. Because the 7 saints present, or the vast majority of the core members of the Demon Hunter Union, had embarked on such a path of no return because they had a blood feud with the dark creatures. Most of their families were killed by the dark creatures. Their friends died in the hands of the dark creatures. So did their comrades. And as time went on, "I kill your people, you kill mine." This caused some demon hunters' hearts to be twisted, and they constantly carried out some extreme revenge on the dark creatures. President Vesemir calmly clapped his hand. "Forget it, there's nothing to explain. Why should we, the Demon Hunter Union, act according to other people's wishes? President is right, business is more important." I'll go first, I bought this," Jarrag hurriedly said. At the same time, Agars also felt that the 7 of them were staring at him. At that moment, the sun seemed to have set. Darkness floated in his heart. The training of the 7 little saints officially began. William left the headquarters of the Demon Hunter Union as if he was in a trap. He was afraid that the sages would come and capture him. D**mn, my beauty level is too much. The next time I do business, I'll try to get them to come over. Otherwise, I'll have to become uglier before going over. Otherwise, it's very dangerous for a boy to go out. The internet is right about this. William finally heaved a sigh of relief when he arrived at the royal city of the war-ending empire. Meow Meow, who was in his arms, stuck out her pink tongue and greedily inhaled the air. She had almost suffocated to death. Well, it was not the smell. William's smell was very pleasant. But there was too much sage aura, and she almost peed her pants. Fortunately, Meow Meow knew in whose arms she was, so she did not dare to do so. But even in her original form, she shyly covered her eyes with her 2 small paws. She did not dare to look at the handsome prince. William supported her body with his left hand, and his right hand slowly stroked her little head and cat ears. Soon, Melantha was snoring in comfort. She even whimpered, "Meow meow, so comfortable." Comfortable, isn't it? This is my ancestral skill. William raised his eyebrows confidently. The female cat, Moses, had been very indignant with William in the past, but now she was obedient to him. But even though the black cat was at the epic level, it could not transform unless it consumed some kind of transformation potion. It was a pity. Moses did not intend to do so. Otherwise, he would have another cat ear girl. A real man could only stroke two cats together. Only a sissy would play with a dog. William did not know if it was because he had forgotten to disguise himself, but when he walked by, all the girls on the street could not help but stare at him. It seemed to be the reason. The guards of the royal city had to rush out to maintain order to prevent the group of girls from disturbing the Lord of Dawn stroking his cat. Ding dong. William took out a magic transmission scroll. It was the second prince of Caesar. Don't leave. You're already in the royal city, but you didn't let me entertain you. William pursed his lips. This guy was getting more and more powerful. He had only appeared for less than half a minute, and he was already spotted by the spies on the street. So he could only reply, "Eat, eat, eat. All you know is to eat. But where are we going to eat?" William smacked his lips. Caesar was now rich and overbearing. 2/3 of the officials and nobles of the empire supported him. If he did not eat a meal from Caesar, he would feel sorry for his stomach. "Good place. I'll get someone to bring you there. Soon." A Grandmaster professional walked in front of William politely and bowed. "Greetings, Lord of the City of Dawn. The second prince asked me to bring you there." William casually placed Melantha on his shoulder and nodded. "Let's go." 9 levels. William glanced at the restaurant. It was called the 9 Levels Restaurant. In his previous life, he had come here for a free meal. At that time, someone had treated him, but he could only eat on the 3rd floor. He could not go up to the highest 9 levels. It was rumored that the highest level even had legendary dragon meat. Not only did he have to be rich, but he also had to have a high status. But his current status was enough, but he wasn't interested in going to a restaurant to show off as a low-level hobby. He had no choice. He was the most powerful person in the City of Dawn. He did not need to show off. But this was the imperial city of the human empire. It was a gathering place for nobles, high officials, and various top professionals. They needed this kind of restaurant to show off their status. It was not a tavern frequented by mercenaries and adventurers. William's appearance was not widely known. But in the self-destruction imperial city, where he often appeared, all the famous forces, nobles, and high officials knew what he looked like. Some of them even had his portrait in their homes. The restaurant attendant did not expect him to come here, but he remembered that the second prince of Caesar had just arrived. He hurriedly and respectfully welcomed him to the 9th level. The most important thing was, William's battle record of killing a sage had spread throughout the legendary continent. After a period of time, his name would resound throughout the gods' continent. And this was one of the key reasons why the pedestrians on the street did not move after seeing him. He was not just handsome. Of course, his looks played a big part. Therefore, under the gazes of countless nobles and officials, William finally arrived at the top level. Caesar was standing nearby with a smile. He invited William to take a seat. There was no one else around. There was no outsider on the entire floor. "Tycoon, it would be good if you could give me the gold coins to book the entire restaurant," William complained. He placed Meow Meow on his lap and asked curiously, "Why are you so formal today? Do you need my help?" The second prince rolled his eyes. "Am I that kind of person?" William did not speak. He just stared at Caesar. 3 seconds later, Caesar could not help but say helplessly, "Help, brother. My father-in-law's outpost can't take it anymore." "What?" William raised his eyebrows. "Your father-in-law's outpost? Has your father-in-law become a sage? Even if your father-in-law can't take it anymore, isn't your father-in-law a peerless battle sage? He is a peak sage. If he goes there, he can suppress anyone who is not convinced. Moreover, isn't there the war-ending empire? The war-ending empire is only in charge of an outpost. There are so many sages in your family. Do they eat sh*t? Caesar knew what William's doubt meant. He could only say helplessly, "My grandfather is too powerful. You know that he is called the peerless battle sage. His battle record must be very strong. Actually, at the end of the Second Era, he killed 7 or 8 Lords of Darkness. If he dares to go to the Dark World, he will only attract more enemies. As for the other sages, they can't leave. One of them went to the fantasy continent with your father. Don't talk nonsense. I don't believe that the war-ending empire doesn't have other sages." William narrowed his eyes, his face full of distrust. Caesar was about to speak when plates of delicacies were pushed over by the waiters. The waiters placed the legendary delicacies on the table. Caesar scratched his head again and said, "The war-ending empire has secretly developed an outpost. Damn, they are so greedy." The corners of William's mouth twitched. But the war-ending empire's method was not wrong. As long as they chose a good location, they could take advantage of the time when the Pope of Light was suppressing the Dark World to launch an attack. Although building an outpost would at least restrain 1 or 2 sages, there were many resources in the Dark World. But there were a lot of resources in the Dark World. As long as the outpost was not wiped out, they could still get the job done. In the future, it would be a profitable business. There were probably quite a few powers like the war-ending empire that were doing this. So even though 13 outposts were destroyed on the surface, there might be more hidden sages in the Dark World. But in this way, at least 4 sages of the war-ending empire were restrained in the Dark World. The peerless battle sage could not attack easily. Another sage was taken away by William's father. Tsk, there were 6 sages. The war-ending empire's capital had basically been depleted. Even if there were any sages, it would be at most 1 or 2. Or rather, the key reason why the peerless battle sage and the rest could not go to the Dark World was because they had to guard the war-ending empire and prevent other enemies from assassinating the emperor. After all, it was a huge human empire. How could there not be a few sages guarding it on the surface? William ate a mouthful of legendary dragon meat, and his attributes increased by a little. But it did not taste good. When Caesar ate, he did not taste good either. He kept glancing at William from the corner of his eyes. 3 minutes later, William sighed. "Tell me, what do you want me to do? Send some reinforcements?" "Well, the military strength of the war-ending empire is not a problem. The key is the geographical location of the outpost. There are 3 Dark Lords around it, but there are many resources there." Can you go personally? Don't you know that people call you Lin Sheng? You're talking about Lin Sheng. Have you read the history books? He's stronger than ordinary sages. Please help him." Caesar's voice became softer and more mysterious. "Ahem, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't talk nonsense. I'm not Sage Lin." William almost spat out the wine in his mouth. Sage Lin. F***ck. That was a big compliment. What was Sage Lin? A legendary Sage Lin was Sage Lin. Of course, even if a legendary Sage Lin killed a sage, he would only kill the weaker sages. But there were no exceptions. If such a powerful being could enter the sage realm, he would become an advanced sage or even a peak sage. In the history of the gods' continent, the number of Sage Lin was even lower than the number of sages. If it was said that a sage realm expert would appear every few decades or centuries, then there would be one. It was extremely rare for a Sage Lin to appear unless it was the turn of the eras. As for how many Sage Lin there were in the legendary continent, the Lord of the City of Chaos did not kill a sage, so he could not be considered a Sage Lin. But no one doubted that he had such combat power. Next was Hell Knight Daniel. His Royal Highness had tried to find out more about Daniel and had even befriended him a few times. Only then did he realize that Daniel's current battle prowess was already extraordinary. He seemed to already possess the battle prowess of a high-level saint. It was as if the Dark World was his home. he often discovered new things for William to visit him. His home was huge. In the future, some of the reincarnations of the main deities had the combat power of a Sage Lin. Even the taboo master of the Rune continent was a Sage Lin. That was right. If his father's breakthrough was an advanced sage, his divine equipment was at the peak of the sage realm, then he was also a Sage Lin. But the Blackleaf Elves' great elder was the Dawn King. He was also an advanced sage. Even though his father had the combat power of a sage, he could only go to the desperate continent to seek a breakthrough. But what about William? He relied on Odin's avatar. He was not a true Sage Lin, especially when his level had not reached the peak. But then again, Odin was an avatar, but it was his own avatar. Was the avatar that he cultivated considered an external force? So it was not wrong to say that he was a Sage Lin. But the 10th outpost, I know. But the 10th outpost had 2 Dark Lords killed in battle. They were captured and 8 million dark creatures were wiped out. To put it bluntly, now that you're wandering around here, you should know that in a short period of time, or even a year and a half, there won't be any Dark Lord paying attention to your outpost, right? William scratched his head. He knew the reason. He was not worried about the safety of the 10th outpost at all. Let me say something that is not boasting. As long as Ursula did not wander around, there was no need to be afraid of the Dark Lords. Even if some old immortal gods, or great devil kings, came, there was no need to be afraid. Because Ursula, who was able to kill the Sage Lin, was definitely not an ordinary person. He might even be stronger than his father. But friendship was friendship. Business was business. William and Caesar had a good relationship, but William's suggestion was like a business discussion. William naturally had to put on a difficult expression. William pondered for a full 10 minutes. He felt that it was about time. He looked at Caesar solemnly and said, "All right, I'll make a trip there. I'll try my best to help you. As deep as possible." "That's good. You'd better work hard and kill a Dark Lord." "It's true. If you really capture and kill a Dark Lord, the resources around that outpost will only be given to you 30% less." Caesar immediately stood up and gulped down the wine in his cup. William raised his eyebrows. 30% was not a small amount. He did not need to send a single soldier. He only needed to send one person. The prerequisite was to kill a Dark Lord. William did not hesitate. He would be the future King of Peace. He also stood up and finished his wine. But after he agreed, he could not help but ponder. Sage Lin. It sounded nice, but if too many sages were killed, it would cause dissatisfaction among many sages. The most important reason was, sages were born to suppress legendary professionals. It was like a high-level creature suppressing a low-level creature. It was suffocating. This also showed the superiority of the sages. But this also caused many sages to dislike the sage legendary professionals. They felt that they had broken the rules. "I won't kill them. I'll just capture them. Is that enough?" William narrowed his eyes. He seemed to have thought of a good idea. Then, William and Caesar did not intend to waste the food on the table. The food was of legendary quality. As long as they did not consume too much, they could increase their attribute. There was no reason to leave the food for the restaurant owner to secretly eat. When William bade farewell to Caesar, Caesar told him that if possible, it would be better to go as soon as possible. Right now, the outpost was in a state of being besieged, and they urgently needed a powerhouse to break the siege. William nodded and said that he would arrive in 3 days. Then, he returned to the City of Dawn. It was Melantha's first time here. She jumped down from William's arms and transformed into a cat lady. At that moment, many pedestrians on the street were stunned. But William did not mind. He was still a virgin. If they dared to think about it, they would have to pay double the price. So, he summoned a beautiful guard girl. "Her name is Melantha. Take her to the intelligence department to report." "Yes, Your Highness." Melantha looked at William in a daze. She thought that she would follow William around all day. She did not expect to be abandoned the moment she arrived at the City of Dawn. What was this? A tool? A tool to be abandoned? Woo-woo. She wanted to cry. Unfortunately, His Royal Highness didn't have the time to deal with the little kitten. He took out the soul vessel and began to coil it with greater strength. Since he could digitize, he didn't have to coil it for a few months like the other professions to get a second life. He only needed 7 or 8 days to have a second life. He could hide it in the Yggdrasil. Even if his physical body was destroyed and he did not dare to resurrect, he could be resurrected from the Yggdrasil. It was simple. He was a very cautious lord. He decided to save the soldier. Before saving Caesar's father, he had to coil it for a second life. Chapter 6:18. Booked for 3 days. But William delayed it for 7 days. He only arrived at the capital of the war-ending empire after completing the inspection of the soul tools. The second prince of Caesar hurriedly brought him to the secret teleportation hall of the empire. Although he had not rushed William for many days, the secret outpost of the war-ending empire could not hold on for much longer. Although the human empires had a strong military force, and it was easy to mobilize millions of soldiers, if there were too many casualties, the value of the outpost would be meaningless. And if it was delayed, the scene of William rescuing Caesar's father-in-law might play out. Soon, William arrived at the teleportation hall. He saw 3 teleportation portals. He watched as legions of troops rushed in to provide support. There was also a spatial gate where wounded soldiers and corpses could be seen everywhere being pulled out. There was also a custom in the gods' world. Souls had to return to their homeland. Otherwise, the dead would not have peace. Basically, any powerful force would not allow their warriors to die outside their borders, unless the battle was too intense, and they did not even have time to retrieve the corpses. For the warriors who died in the dark world, this custom would be carried out to the end, because if the corpses were not eaten, they could transform on the deathly battlefield. For example, corpses with flesh could transform into Death Knight. Skeletons without flesh and blood could transform into skeleton soldiers. That was why there was such a portal. Under relatively safe circumstances, it would not be closed, and people could drag the corpses back at any time. William arrived at the dark world again. There were all sorts of flying magical beasts in the dark, blood-red sky. The rumbling sounds of cannons resounded throughout the entire city, and energy bullets could be seen everywhere in the sky. Without a doubt, it was the Dawn brand magic Gatling. Many buildings in the fortress had collapsed. Many earth element mages were continuously reinforcing and rebuilding the buildings amid the flames of war. The walls in the north, south, east, and west were not occupied by the dark creatures, but they could only resist with difficulty. But if there was no more sage to break through the gaps, it was only a matter of time before the outpost fell. A relatively elite, high-level army had just walked out of the portal when they saw the scene in front of them. Some of the soldiers were so scared that their legs turned to jelly. The Guru army commander had never been to the dark world, but at least he knew what he had to do. They immediately boosted their morale and shouted the slogan of fighting for the empire. They followed the flag and rushed to the west wall in an orderly manner. William took a deep look. The strength of this army was not bad, but it was unknown how many people would survive. If things went wrong, the army's designation might even be removed. One of the epic commanders, who was covered in blood, was holding his broken leg as he limped back to treat his injuries. Suddenly, he noticed William, who was in a daze. This person was just about to curse out loud, asking him why he wasn't going to the front lines and was just standing there in a daze. But he discovered that William was not wearing the standard armor. After taking a closer look, his face lit up with joy. He immediately shouted, "Hanty, come here. The Lord of the City of Dawn is here. Where did you find him?" William turned to look, and an epic shield warrior hurriedly ran over. He did not greet William. Instead, he said anxiously. "Greetings, Lord of the City of Dawn. You've finally come. The two sages of the Empire have been waiting for you for a few days. Are they free now?" William followed him and flew into the distance. "I've just fought with the 3 Dark Lords in the domain of sages. I don't know the outcome, but Lord Warlock Saint Gregory seems to have suffered serious injuries." Hanty's voice was very soft. In this noisy battlefield, only William could hear him. The prince frowned slightly. Gregory? The controller of gold was a powerful metal element warlock saint. In terms of defense, he was not weaker than ordinary battle sages. His injuries were so serious that they could be seen by an epic professional. Perhaps he had suffered serious internal injuries in the previous few battles. "Let's go." "Yes." Hanty nodded. Both of them sped up and soon arrived at the command post of the outpost. Hanty did not enter. He pulled open the door curtain and let William enter alone. Boom. William turned his head. There was a crack in the southern city wall. The earth element legendary enchanter was frantically reinforcing it. William took a deep breath. The situation was not good. Then he stepped into the crack and saw Gregory consuming an extremely small amount of life potion in an attempt to speed up the recovery of his injuries. But his face was pale and his eyes were slightly dazed. It was obvious that his origin had been injured. The small amount of life potion was of no use, because as the level of a professional continued to increase, 3 drops of life potion would not be enough to completely restore his health points. His mother's inner armor had also been treated as a collection, and its level could not be upgraded. For experts like saints, they would need at least 100 drops of life potion to completely recover from the injury to their origin. As such, William's eyes suddenly lit up. He could do business again. When he saw the other sage of the war-ending empire, he was surprised and even in disbelief, because he was the thunder element battle sage of the war-ending empire. His name was Dalix, and he was titled the Thunder Emperor. Without a doubt, this was a high-ranked saint seat. After all, the title of sage had to be recognized by many sages. There were a few thunder element sages in the gods' continent, but he was the only sage who dared to be called the Thunder Emperor. His power was self-evident. Dalix was a tall man. He was 1 meters tall. He held a battle axe in his hand. His armor was full of scars, but it was filled with the radiance of divinity. His eyes were bright and full of vigor, as if he had no injuries. But when he looked at William, he seemed to be full of curiosity. "Greetings to the 2 sages." William slowly bowed. Dalix chuckled. "You're too polite. You're a sage, and you have the combat power to kill sages. If not for the fact that your soul has not left the river of time, you'd be an expert like us." The Thunder Emperor is joking. "It's not that I'm too strong. It's just that Agar's is too weak." William revealed a shy smile and tried to be as low-key as possible. The burly Thunder Emperor's mouth twitched. He almost drew his axe and slashed at William. Damn it. What did he mean? Did he say that the sages were useless? His tone was very low-key. He used the most simple and unpretentious attitude to say the most pretentious lines. He was indeed the legendary reincarnation of the Thunder God. His mockery was not weak. But then again, what about Thor, whom he favored? Was he just the reincarnation of an ordinary thunder element god? Stop fooling around. Let's talk about something serious. Cough, cough, cough. Gregory spat out a mouthful of golden blood. However, this old man did not want to waste the saint blood, so he quickly caught the saint blood and swallowed it again. He smacked his lips and said, "Saint blood with life aura tastes different. It's not as smelly as before." William and Dalix looked at each other speechlessly. How could he say that his blood was salty in such a serious situation? **T. His taste was too strong. Usually, it was half a bowl of rice and half a bowl of salt. If he was not a sage, he would have high blood pressure, stroke, and coronary heart disease. He would die early. Gregory did not know that he was drawing circles and muttering to himself. He said helplessly, "You're a little late. If you had come 2 days earlier, I wouldn't have been seriously injured. Now that you're here, you can only maintain the current situation. I won't be able to participate in the battle for a while." Could it be that your sage combat power has not recovered? That's why it has dragged on until now? The Thunder Emperor suddenly asked. Gregory was also stunned. If the Lord of the City of Dawn could only unleash a wave of attacks, and they could not kill a Dark Lord, they would definitely not be able to withstand the frequent attacks of the enemy. When that happened, they would have to give up this outpost. It would be equivalent to wasting all their efforts. They would not even be able to obtain any resources. It would be a huge loss. William did not reply, and the latter did not pursue the matter. He glanced at the real-time surveillance map of the fortress and looked at the dark creatures swarming over. The Empire's army could continue to persevere, but it was definitely not a solution. They needed high-level combat power to solve the key problem. So he asked, "3 Dark Lords, are you advanced and intermediate sages that difficult to deal with?" It's too risky for the Empire to choose this location. It's right in the middle of the forces of the 3 Dark Lords. The corners of William's mouth twitched. The war-ending Empire was too greedy. They wanted to take advantage of the situation. Look at the elf race's outpost. It was as stable as an old Go. There weren't many resources in the surroundings, but its geographical location was good. They only relied on the power of a dark sovereign. Both sides were just small soldiers fighting each other, and there was no St. Plain powerhouse at all. He had forgotten. That was the location chosen by the Supreme Pontiff of Light. Apologies. He had wronged the group of iron-headed kids, Motherf Kerr, who knew that one of those 3 bastards had actually hidden his cultivation and suddenly erupted with the battle prowess of a high-level sage. Otherwise, we would have long suppressed them and beaten them up. Our butts would have bloomed in the future. The Thunder Monarch cursed angrily. Then, he revealed the strength of the 3 sovereigns of darkness. There was one advanced, intermediate, and beginner sage. According to the intelligence of the Empire, if there were 2 intermediate and 1 beginner sage, the Thunder Emperor and Gregory would be able to defeat the 3 of them. Even if none of them died in battle, they would be able to beat the sh*t out of them. But if they wanted to blame something, they could only blame it on the wrong information. After the D**mn legendary devil had his soul extracted and his skin skinned, it was discovered that he was not lying. That fool did not know that their leader had concealed his strength. There were traitors everywhere. As the war between the 2 continents progressed into its later stages, the traitors from both sides frequently resorted to their own methods. Among them, the number of Holy Plane experts who were tricked and killed by them was truly not small. The Holy Plane experts from both sides were so angry that they ground their teeth, wishing that they could send all of them to the Demon Hunter Union. One of the 72 devil gods, Vasak, who had been looked down upon, had advanced to the advanced sage level. Hence, under such circumstances, even if Grigory's strength was good and could temporarily hold back the 2 sages, he would attempt to determine the victor between the Thunder Emperor and him. But Vasak, who had just advanced to the advanced sage level, would retreat quickly every time he was about to be defeated. It was difficult for a warrior like the Thunder Emperor, who did not have many control skills, to stop him. As time passed, Grigory's internal injuries worsened, and he could not hold on any longer. Just as the Thunder Emperor and Grigory were thinking about whether they should report to the Thunder Emperor and see if they could summon another sage or choose to retreat to reduce their losses, William suddenly took out a bottle filled with 200 drops of life potion. The Thunder Emperor and Grigory turned to look at the small bottle. They could feel the life aura coming out of the magic bottle, and they were about to drool. "Life potion? You have so much?" Grigory's expression changed slightly. William smiled shyly. "The children of rich families have a lot of snacks. After all, I'm my father's favorite child." The Thunder Emperor and Grigory were deep in thought. This D***MN rich second-generation heir. He deserved to die. MMP. Why didn't he have a sage-level father? That was not right. Duke Albright was the son of the peerless battle-sage, but his father did not dare to come to the Dark World. It could not be helped. Once the peerless battle-sage came, at least 3 peak lords of darkness would attack. In fact, the frequent attacks of the 3 lords of darkness might have something to do with Albright. But it was different for Rogers. He was a novice peak sage, and according to his luck, he would encounter a complete temple every time he passed by, so he would definitely obtain a lot of life potion. Ahem, for the sake of the Empire's victory, give me the life potion first. If we really want to determine the victor, there will be plenty of benefits for you. Grigory stretched out his evil golden hand to grab the life potion. William hurriedly kept the life potion in his space ring and laughed. It's a deal for me to help, and the life potion is also a deal. Lord Warlock Saint, you're the chief Warlock Saint of the Empire and the honorary dean of the Magic Academy. You're very rich. This you know. William skillfully rubbed his fingers together. The controller of Gold's face darkened. D***MN, are you trying to scam me while I'm injured? 200 drops of life potion were enough for him to recover from his injuries twice. But the price was ridiculous. It was equivalent to at least 2 magical crystal mines. Those were mana crystals after all. How many magical weapons could they produce? 2 words. No way. He did not have money, nor did he have magical crystals. Those were resources of the Empire, and he did not have that much. At most, he would retreat. It was quite dangerous. He heard that many sages had perished at the other outposts, and 70% of them were Warlock Saints. D***MN, was the status of Warlock Saints that low? If he continued fighting, he would be dead. But when the Thunder Monarch saw him in this state, he hurriedly transmitted a message to him. Buy it. It's worth it. You'll be serving the Empire. How can you pay for it? Is your brain made of iron? Have you become stupid from training? Grigory gritted his teeth and glared at the Thunder Monarch. After pondering for 3 seconds, he coughed and said, "Name a price. I'll buy it all." After all, drinking a lot of life potion seemed to be able to heal some internal injuries. It was not a loss to buy it. Anyway, the Empire would pay for it. He might even be able to recover from it, 3 magical crystal veins. William made a victory sign. D***MN. Grigory gritted his teeth and cursed. Don't think that just because you're the son of Rogers, I won't dare to beat you up. I'll give you 1.5 mines. I'm leaving. I didn't rely on my father to grow up. But even if business fails, the friendship between the City of Dawn and the Empire will last forever. Look for me again if you have a mission. After all, I'm the king of war in the legendary continent. The prince sighed and planned to leave. Sigh 2. 2 is a deal. You're not sincere. My father went through a lot of hardships and traveled all over the mountains and rivers to gather this small bottle of life potion. I can't even bear to drink it myself. If I sell it to you, my father will definitely scold me for being a foolish son when he returns. William pouted. The Thunder Monarch suddenly said, 2.5. Don't be too greedy. The life potion isn't priceless. There are substitutes. If it wasn't for the fact that time is tight, sages wouldn't need to use it to heal their injuries. Then that's fine. You're right. Sages recover very quickly. If it wasn't for the fact that time is tight, they wouldn't need the life potion at all. But the war in the future will be tight, especially the Empire. There won't be much life potion left, right? William tossed the bottle to Grigory. He was not afraid that the sage would go back on his word. When the sage received the life potion, he quickly swallowed a mouthful and meditated to recover from his injuries. The Thunder Monarch squinted his eyes cautiously. This brat was too shrewd. He was doing business with his allies. He had to treat him with caution. Hence, he said proudly, the Empire has plenty of life potion. It depends on whether it's worth it. especially since your combat power isn't stable. Who knows if you'll be able to hold back a sage while Gregory recovers, giving me a chance to kill him." William raised his eyebrows. He did not care about the Thunder Monarch's tone. He sighed and said, "TSK, I wanted to sell you a few more bottles of life potion. Since the Empire has enough, forget it." Both of them blinked. They did not seem to have heard him clearly. "Wait a moment. Were you sure you were talking about tens of bottles of life potion? The life potion produced by the World Tree? Or other types of life potion? 1 drop per bottle? Or 200 drops per bottle? Gosh, buy it." Of course they would buy it. There were not many magical stone mines, but there were other mines, secret manuals, skills, forbidden skills, body fusion, equipment, warships, and various other things. In short, in such a situation where there was a great war, the World Tree was gone, but the life potion produced by it was a super strategic resource. As long as the sage was not instantly killed, he could quickly recover his combat power and enter the battlefield again. Then, he could use this to break the stalemate and obtain more resources. It was definitely not a loss. Otherwise, how could the elf clan have resisted the Dark World for 800 years on their own? They had a lot of life potion. Next, both of them forgot about the Dark Army outside and started a new wave of secret transactions. Should they worry about the greed of the war-ending empire? Apologies. He had a father who had picked up a full set of divine equipment. This amount of life potion did not arouse too much suspicion. It would be fine as long as they did not sell too much. Chapter 6:19. 30 bottles of water of life, a total of 6,000 drop. This was definitely not a small amount. It was equivalent to more than 20 days of the World Tree's production. The World Tree seemed to have been controlled by the elves, but it was only because of the goddess of life that the gods did not snatch it away. As for the water of life produced by the World Tree, it was basically used by the goddess of life to befriend the gods during the mythological era. This was also why all the temples had water of life. Therefore, a lot of water of life was produced throughout the year, but the elves did not even have the chance to look at it, much less drink it. Many pointy-eared elves did not even have the chance to look at it before it became the little treasures of the gods. It was only after the gods fell that the elves gained control over the water of life of the World Tree. They gradually accumulated more and rose in the Second Era. The Thunder Monarch and Gregory wanted to exchange for the water of life, so they naturally reported it through a transmission scroll. After a discussion with the great Emperor of War, many saints, high-ranking officials, and nobles, they decided to pay a lot of magical crystal mines, magical energy crystal mines, equipment, fusion skills, and so on, as well as the resources on the 4th floor near the outpost. It seemed like the great Emperor of War had paid a great price. But for a human empire that had existed for tens of thousands of years, it was a drop in the ocean. This was especially so for the water of life of the World Tree, which had long been extinct. Not only could it extend the lifespan of legendary experts, but it could also be used to heal the injuries of saints. It was a strategic treasure. In addition, some of the major nobles in the country, who were not very powerful but had a certain amount of authority, also wanted a share. In general, almost a third of the 6,000 drops of water of life would be wasted, and they would have to be distributed to the nobles and high-ranking officials. They could not leave all of it for the use of the saints during the war. This was because some of the sage and legendary clans that had risked their lives for the Empire were not too weak in the Empire. If the Emperor of Ji-gu wanted to control the Empire, he would have to at least give some face to these people. He could not appear to be too heartless. Otherwise, if the saints and legends died in battle, the family would be defeated. When that happened, how many saints would really swear loyalty to the Empire? In a word, regardless of the power, as time went by, it would definitely become more and more bloated, and the complicated relationships would become intertwined like a spider's web. Pulling one hair would cause the whole body to move. But to the great Emperor of War, this was still considered good. They only needed to waste a third. Similar to the Sunset Empire, if he really had 6,000 drops of the water of life, at least half of it would have been wasted, and it was even possible that more than half would have been wasted. This was also the main reason why the Sunset Empire was split into 3 empires. But His Royal Highness did not need to worry about these things. Humans were just like that. From the mythological era to the 4th era, it was impossible to escape from the ways of the world. However, it was also because of the ways of the world that many things seemed to be very unreasonable, but it also made them more humane, and they could also explode with unimaginable power. There was no such thing as an absolutely perfect race, nor was there an absolutely perfect social structure. These were the various races in the world of gods. They all had their own weaknesses and strength. After both parties signed the terms of the contract, William watched as the 2 sages imprinted their soul auras on the scroll. He immediately put it away and carefully checked if there were any loopholes in the contract. Then, he happily threw the 30 bottles of life potion over. It's another win-win deal. The Thunder Monarch grasped the sacred battle axe tightly. His eyes flashed with electric arcs as he gazed into the distance. Keep the contract well. It's been 4 to 5 hours. The Dark Lord is probably going to attack again. By the way, Old Gold, have you recovered from your injuries? Yes, almost. I drank 100 drops of the water of life, and I've recovered at least 90% of my combat power. I'm fine now. But I'm a little curious. So much water of life is equivalent to the treasures plundered from a complete shrine. Are you sure Rogers won't hack you to death on the street if you sell it just like that? Gregory suddenly asked with a sigh. If he had a son like this, he would definitely let him experience the true meaning of fatherly love. If he did not use the metal cage to lock him up for 8 to 10 years, he would definitely not let him out. He even wanted to go back to the time when he was born and directly strangle him to death. William raised his eyebrows. Everyone is different. Look at my father's set of divine equipment. How many complete temples do you think he has excavated? It's just some water of life. It's just a small amount. But it's not convenient for me to continue selling it. After all, I don't have much left. Gregory and the Thunder Monarch went into deep thought. That was right. Rogers had so many divine equipment. It was as if he had picked them up for free. There might be thousands of drops of water of life, or even more. The 2 of them looked at each other. That was right. They would seize the opportunity to make friends with William and try to cheat him of some water of life. Even if the asking price was higher, the water of life was a strategic treasure that could not be regenerated. It would be a huge profit if they could obtain it. Lord William had said that he did not have much left. But according to their estimations, he definitely had more than 6,000 drop. Rumble. Whoosh. 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 The magic cannons and magical Gatling guns were fired at full force. The entire sky was densely covered with energy bombs to prevent the dark creatures from attacking from the sky. The war-ending empire had many air forces, and the Griffin Legion had the most. But there were too many dark creatures that could fly. It was not the time to throw away their lives. The siege that had lasted for a few hours was a small matter. Now, the Dark Army was surging in from all directions. It was obvious that the Lord of Darkness had decided to attack again. The Thunder Monarch walked out of the command center and roared at his father-in-law, Caesar, "All right, I'll leave the defense of the fortress to you. If we don't lose, but the outpost falls, even if your father is here, I'll chop off your head with my axe." "Yes, sir. If the military fortress falls, I'll present my head to the Emperor." The commander of the Imperial Guards had been transferred here and had to bear great pressure. But he did not have any complaint. In fact, he was very happy that he could persuade the Emperor of War ending. This was because he had long wanted to do something big and spectacular. He did not want to be a commander of the Imperial Guards who had nothing to do under his father's protection. He wanted to be a general. How many people did not want to lead their troops to battle and kill their enemies? He had to guard the safe and worry-free royal palace and watch the officials and nobles chat. This was the greatest torture for him. Light was a legendary pinnacle professional. He was very powerful, but he had never displayed his abilities. Because he had a father, peerless battle sage. He was one of the 12 human sages at the end of the Second Era. Since young, he had been known as the peerless battle sage and the son of the pinnacle sage. But he would rather rise like the lord of the City of Dawn than rely on the peerless battle sage to become the commander of the Imperial Guards. Basically, anyone with a bit of self-respect would want to break away from the halo of their elders when they grew up. Now, it was time to prove himself. Aguilita commanded the army and once again engaged in battle with the Dark Army. As the outpost was not built on a natural barrier, they could only rely on the city walls that were more than 100 meters tall to resist the enemy. But batches of dark creatures died under their feet. The 100-meter-tall city walls did not seem to have any advantage. Many dark creatures that could not fly leaped into the air with great strength. This caused the shield-bearers on the 4 sides of the city walls to face great pressure. Many shield-bearers' hand bones had been shattered by the impact, but they still held their shields tightly. They hoped that the spearmen behind them could seize the opportunity to kill the enemies in front of them or pierce them to the bottom of the city walls. The battle scenes in the magical fantasy world were very agile and fast. The battle between the professionals and the dark creatures was exciting, and it was a feast for the eyes. Various colorful battle energy and magic filled the battlefield. It was like a dazzling fireworks display. Vashik, let's fight again. The Thunder Emperor wielded his battle axe. Accompanied by the rumbling of thunder, he charged straight at the Dark Army, creating a bloody line. He was so fast that he created a lightning tornado, and countless dark creatures were blown into the sky. Damn it, enter the space of the sage position. Vashik was shocked and furious. Both sides had been very restrained. During the battle, they tried their best not to charge at each other. But now, the Thunder Emperor seemed to have changed. A trace of caution flashed in Vashik's eyes. Both of them had just entered the space of the sage position. The other 2 Lords of Darkness suddenly appeared. They looked at Gregory coldly. The former sneered. Hey, your aura is already so weak, but you still want to hold on. You have guts. Cut the crap. Even if I die here today, I will take at least one of you with me. Gregory stepped on a thick golden magic book. As he waved his hands, countless swords, spears, and axes on the battlefield transformed into rays of light and circled around him. The beginner Lord of Darkness narrowed his eyes and suddenly transmitted a message. He seems to have recovered from his injuries, but it's just a weak arrow. Take advantage of his weakness. Kill him. There's no need to enter the space of the sage position. Try your best to kill him on the spot. Slaughter the soldiers of this fortress. The 2 Lords of Darkness looked at Gregory, who had ascended to the clouds. They transformed into 2 black meteors and broke the sound barrier as they charged forward. William, who only had a legendary aura, did not attract the attention of others on this battlefield. He did not choose to face the Lords of Darkness directly. Instead, he coldly flew towards the eastern city wall, which was having a hard time defending. There were 13 legendary professionals fighting here. The war-ending empire had 1 less legendary expert, but they could still hold off the Lords of Darkness. But when a zealot demon saw William, he stopped attacking another human expert. He suddenly appeared in front of William and slashed down with his huge axe. Every move of a legendary expert had the power to split mountains and rivers. The axe instantly transformed into a 1,000-meter-long shadow that continuously crushed the air as it slashed towards William. Be careful. Several legendary experts exclaimed in surprise. They secretly scolded William for being too confident. He had just arrived in the dark world, but he was still so arrogant. His opponent was an advanced legendary zealot demon. But when the 1,000-meter-long axe was about to slash down on William's head, William raised his left hand and clenched it. Rumble. The 1,000-meter-long axe shattered inch by inch, and the resulting shockwave spread to a radius of a few hundred meters. Many people were dumbfounded by this scene. They all thought that William was wearing an invisible godly gauntlet. Otherwise, how could he withstand this blow? At the same time, Prince William stepped forward and punched the zealot demon. Bang! Fist against fist. A ring-shaped shockwave exploded, and the ground within a radius of a few thousand meters sank by a few meters. Gotcha! 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 The zealot demon's arm was also broken. His body shot into the dark army like a cannonball, leaving a clear trail behind him. The expressions of the experts from both sides changed. But the legendary experts of the war-ending empire's eyes lit up. Was this the Lord of the City of Dawn? No wonder he was the reincarnation of the legendary Thunder God. Next, Prince William transformed into a bolt of lightning and traversed the battlefield of a few thousand meters. Wherever he passed, electric arcs flowed. Tens of thousands of dark creatures were repelled by the electric arcs. At the same time, the zealot demon also used a forbidden skill. His body expanded to 3 meters, and a layer of black bone appeared on the surface of his body. It looked like an armor that was comparable to the divine equipment set. The zealot demon roared and opened his mouth. The moment his right fist reappeared, William did not give him a chance to attack. William stood not far away and gently tapped with his finger. Crack! Electric arcs circulated. A purplish-red electric arc that was as thick as a finger instantly traversed the battlefield of tens of thousands of meters. A small hole appeared in the zealot demon's glabella, and his body stopped moving. Subsequently, the prince calmly turned his head around. Gotcha! 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 Pom, 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 a sound rang out from behind him. The sturdy body of the legendary advanced devil shattered and turned into powder. The battlefield behind him exploded like a shockwave. A fissure that was hundreds of meters deep and tens of thousands of meters long formed. Tens of thousands of dark creatures within the fissure died on the spot. They turned into powder and became nutrients for the dark world. The Thunder Finger. It was not a skill that came with the Thunder Ring. It was created after Odin became a god. The power of the two skills was vastly different. Now, it had become one of William's trump cards. Who is this person? A legendary devil was shocked and furious. The Lord of the City of Dawn. I heard this name. What? It's him? The legendary experts on the battlefield were surprised. They had also heard of this half-elf lord. He was the one who had captured a Dark Lord. A legendary pinnacle devil sneered. This person is here to help, but he doesn't dare to step into the sage battlefield. He obviously doesn't have the legendary combat power of the Advent Sage. Get many legendary pinnacle experts from other places to surround and kill him. Yes, sir. Orders were issued one after another. Soon, 4 legendary pinnacle devils, Balrog and Hell Knights attacked. William's actions reduced the pressure on the defenders, but when he glanced at Gregory, who was being beaten up, he took a deep breath. He decided to settle these small problems as soon as possible. Therefore, when the 4 legendary pinnacle experts surrounded him, Prince William casted beans to form soldiers. A total of 30 legendary heroic spirits appeared in the center of the battlefield. Instantly, the expressions of the 4 legendary experts changed. They could not help but look at the battlefield commander. Did they say that they would fight him alone? Why did the 30 of them have to fight the 4 of them alone? Brothers, weren't you going to give an explanation? The commander revealed an awkward but polite smile. He silently clenched his fist and said, "Don't be afraid no matter what difficulties we encounter. Face him with a smile. Do your best, your mother's head. Go and fight him too. Do you really think that the commander can just stand and talk? Charge!" A huge bump appeared on the commander's head. They did not know which B***starred had taken the opportunity to punch him. But they temporarily put aside their plans to besiege the city and charged towards the Lord of the City of Dawn. As long as they could defeat the Lord of the City of Dawn, who could unleash the power of a sage, it would be equivalent to killing a sage. The rewards would be too great. From then on, they would reach the pinnacle of their lives after marrying the legendary white succubus. Gosh! Prince William's expression changed. His group of legendary heroic spirits were just puppet. They could attack professionals of the same level, but if they were surrounded, they would definitely die. But the legendary experts in the city did not sit idly by. They also rushed out of the city and chose to support William. In an instant, both sides changed the location of the battlefield. Once again, a white-hot battle erupted outside the city. Almost at the same time, many legendary experts activated their domains at the same time. The space within a radius of tens of thousands of meters became distorted. Various elements filled the area, and the weaker legendary professionals could not withstand it. Due to the multi-layered domains effect, they suffered damage in the thousands or even tens of thousands at every moment. The professionals with slower recovery speed could only fight for a while before they were on the verge of death. Hence, at the center of the battlefield, only a dozen professionals who were advanced legendary and above were left. There were many devils among them, so 5 legendary devils surrounded William and kicked him in a circle. Or rather, they were slashing at each other. Prince William slashed at them. Then they slashed at him 5 times. In just a short while, William was covered in blood. His body was already covered in blood. His divinity-set armor's recovery speed was not very fast, but it was still unable to block every slash. But what surprised the devils the most was, as time dragged on, the prince did not even take any potions. He only used some secret skills to increase his attribute. However, one of the demons around him retreated and panted in fear. I can't take it anymore. I feel like there's a dragon hidden in this guy's body. Just how much HP does he have? Who knows? There's something wrong with this ranger. He still doesn't use bows and arrows. Our information is wrong. Right now, only the high legend rank can effectively injure him. After you've rested, hurry up and come back here. A demon roared. Both sides exchanged hundreds of slashes in a short period of time. They watched as William's body was covered in wounds. Then, they watched as his injuries recovered rapidly. It was as though he had an immortal body. It was very difficult to deal with him, but they did not notice what William was muttering. 300 slashes. 400 slashes. 500 slashes. Instantly, Prince William's eyes lit up, and the muscles in his right hand bulged. He spun on the spot and slashed horizontally. Pom, pom, pom. He slashed horizontally. His sword slashed horizontally. Like a full moon, the sword radiance covered the entire domain battlefield. 4 legendary pinnacle and 1 advanced legendary vomited blood at the same time. Hundreds of deep wounds appeared on their bodies, and they were badly mutilated. At the same time, 3 of them could not withstand the attack and perished on the spot. The other 2 lost 50% of their health points and were on the verge of death. But at this moment, Douglas was defeated again. He was smashed into the center of the battlefield like a meteorite. Countless people lifted their heads and watched as the 2 Lords of Darkness charged at Douglas. The kingdom's chief Grand Mage Sage could not help but say, "William, your ultimate move, your ultimate move." Enough. The prince grinned with his white teeth and snapped his fingers. Swish. A shadow appeared on the surface of his body. God's descent. Countless people's expressions changed drastically. Was he really a sage? A sage who could possess such combat power at any time? Chapter 620. When William used God's descent again, his aura and combat power soared to the intermediate sage level. Especially, God's descent was an ability. The cooldown time was very short. This was not his skill. It was Odin's skill. After all, how many gods had the cooldown time of using God's descent for a month, a week, or a day? It was impossible. Wars were frequent in the mythological era. Often, several battlefields were at war. When many fanatics used themselves as a medium to pray to Odin for God's descent, would they fail in the fight for faith because of the cooldown time? It was impossible. At most, the believers could not withstand the power of God's descent, and their bodies would collapse. Normally speaking, legendary professionals who had used God's arrival would often die because of physical factors, as they could not withstand the descent of the gods' clones and incarnations. But William did not have to worry about this problem. He did not intend to summon any incarnation or clone. He only summoned his real body. After the two merged, there would not be any pain. Instead, he would feel so good that he could not control himself. When the surrounding legendary devils saw the cruel smile on William's face, they could not help but retreat. They were afraid that they would be slaughtered by this pervert. But William did not have the time to care about them. He waved his hand and slapped 7 or 8 legendary devils away. Then, he wielded his sword and charged at the nearby Lord of Darkness. Gregory realized that this AD had a big move. He did not dare to leave behind the remaining 100 drops of life potion. He used the healing potion, and his injuries recovered quickly. He decided to counterattack. When the two Dark Lords saw this scene, they decisively chose to retreat. It didn't matter even if the millions of dark creatures present were all killed. As long as they weren't, there was no need to worry about firewood. After all, the Lord of the City of Dawn's battle record was not to be underestimated. He had become a thorn in the side of many Lord of Darkness. In addition, he was only at the legendary level, so it was difficult to lock on to his aura. There was no way to prevent him from appearing on a battlefield. But they were facing the chief warlock sage of the war-ending empire. Not only did he have extremely strong defense, but he also had excellent control skills to resist the two Lord of Darkness with his warlock sage body. Ever since Gregory entered the dark world, he had been constantly hammered by the two bastards. His origin had been damaged many times. Now that he had a chance to counterattack, he would not show mercy. He shouted angrily, and the ground within a radius of tens of thousands of meters trembled. Heaven and earth, all the equipment and weapons on the wreckage, as long as they were made of metal elements, were all destroyed at this moment. They turned into long rivers of metal and gathered together. In an instant they formed a gigantic cage, trapping the 4 of them within. Saint incantation, inescapable net? The faces of the 2 dark sovereigns changed drastically. Even saints would not be able to break this forbidden spell in a short period of time. If there were enough metal elements here, they could even regenerate at any time, making them extremely difficult to deal with. More importantly, this thing also had the ability to block teleportation. Ever since the Darkness invasion, the Warlock Saints seemed to have died the most. But under normal circumstances, there was no chance for them to use forbidden spells. However, Metal Elemental Warlock Saints were different. The more they fought on the battlefield, the more powerful they would be. This was because there were too many metals on the battlefield, so much so that Metal Elemental Warlock Saints could instantly cast forbidden spells. Damn it, kill Doglet. He's also in the inescapable net. He's the spell core. Go and stall the Lord of the City of Dawn. The beginner Dark Sovereign's face twitched, but he nodded helplessly. Okay, but you have to be quick. I can't hold on for much longer. This guy has captured Agareth. I'm not as strong as Agareth. Agareth is too old to use the forbidden spell. Are you not going to use it now? The latter looked at the surrounding cage and gripped his black and thick spear tightly. He said ferociously, "Then let's fight it out with them." The 2 dark sovereigns nodded. As they charged at the 2 of them, they used their transformation skills. Their bodies were also burning with extremely cold black flames. Their auras surged and soared into the sky. The ground within the metal cage was completely shattered, and the metal cage hidden underground was exposed. The gigantic cage seemed to be suspended in the sky, trapping the four of them. After the Dark Sovereign burned his origin, he was close to reaching the advanced level of a sage. Needless to say, the latter had the combat power of an intermediate level of a sage. Burn the darkness origin. William, stall them. Forget it, don't stall them. I can't hold on for much longer. My origin has been restored twice. It's not stable to begin with. If I burn it again, I'll die. Gregory used almost all the metal elements in his hands on the inescapable net, causing his defense to plummet. He wielded his saber and slashed wildly. Soon, his body was covered with wounds. He roared. William rolled his eyes. Gregory was trapped, but he couldn't defeat them because he didn't have any metal to use. Was there something wrong with his brain? Why did he want to stall them? Because burning one's origin could increase one's combat power in a short period of time. But even a fool would know that this skill couldn't be used for a long time. If burning half of one's origin did not end the battle or escape from the predicament, if one did not stop burning one's origin, the burning would not stop. In the end, one could only self-destruct or choose to die after burning one's origin. The price of death was the destruction of one's soul. No matter who it was, without the origin, they would die. Even the Netherworld River couldn't stop them. But since Douglet can't stall them, then, /// William looked at the Lord of Darkness, who was covered in black flames. He wielded his heaven-suppressing blade and slashed tens of times. Dazzling thunder blade energy tore through the space and surged forward with endless killing power. But the Lord of Darkness, who was burning his origin, was too powerful. The black flames on the surface of his body were attached to his origin. His defense had increased to an unimaginable level. He withstood more than 10 attacks. Not only was his body unharmed, but even the heaven-suppressing buff did not affect him. He thrust his spear forward with a ferocious expression. Swish! A giant python that was burning with black flames instantly arrived and heavily knocked William back. The strengthened battle energy shield did not even last for 3 seconds before it was instantly broken. William's body was like a ragdoll as he smashed into the metal cage and slowly slid down. D*MN surface dweller die. The long spear, which was covered with poison and barbs, swept across. This unusually strong sacred weapon was forcefully thrown in an arc. It was evident how powerful the spear was. William's body fell down and narrowly dodged the spear. His divinity-quality helmet exploded, and even his hair was swept away by the spear energy. **T. William was furious. How long had it been? He had been beaten bald again. Did the Lord of Darkness know how to waste the life potion? He had not washed his hair with the life potion for a long time. But right now, the prince was also a little incompetent and furious. The Lord of Darkness was too powerful. His defense and attack had reached their limit. Even if William was in the state of God's descent, he didn't have much of an advantage. He could only continue to fight with the Lord of Darkness. As for the battle between the two, the scene of the battle was naturally extremely shocking. They clung tightly to the metal cage as they fought. Every single move they made was enough to unleash a power that could destroy heaven and earth. If not for the forbidden spell of the inescapable net, everything within a radius of tens of thousands of meters would be reduced to ashes. The confrontation between thunder and darkness elements filled every inch of the air. The two elements collided and produced dazzling sparks. Suddenly, tentacles made of darkness elements swarmed towards William. They wanted to imprison his body. William took a step forward and pointed his left hand at the sky. Rumble! A lightning pillar that was tens of meters thick suddenly descended. The darkness elements in the surroundings were instantly reduced to ashes. But at this moment, a sinister person, who had transformed into a dark tentacle, suddenly appeared beside William and stabbed with his spear. Gotcha! The battle energy shield was broken again. The armor on William's chest shattered. Not only did the black spears pierce through William's heart, but they also nailed him to the ground with an unimaginable force. Bang! Shockwaves surged. The dust that had been condensed from earth elements turned into earth elements due to the energy explosion. Spear! The Lord of Darkness shouted and was about to stab with his spear again. But he spoke quickly, and so did William. He transformed into the shadow of holy thunder and walked among the illusions. His speed was much faster than usual. Then, the sacred spear appeared in front of him and slashed at his head. The black flames on the Lord of Darkness' body exploded, and a wound appeared on his head. Green blood flowed continuously, and he retreated thousands of meters. But before the prince could step forward again, he suddenly stood still and started vomiting blood. The originally glowing golden blood was showing signs of turning black. Gosh, poison? At this moment, William finally had the time to glance at the attribute panel. This poison was not considered fatal, but it reduced all his attributes by 20%. It made him, who was already in a disadvantageous state, even worse. Is this the so-called Lord of the City of Dawn? Agar's has fallen in your hands. I can only say that he's useless. The Lord of Darkness, who was holding his spear, charged forward again. Black light accompanied him. As he approached, the entire world seemed to be filled with black flames. Only in the corner of the golden cage were there flashes of lightning that flickered between bright and dark. It was such a scene. It was as if there was a monster that wanted to devour the heavens and destroy the earth. It was going to destroy the only remaining light. Until now, William had even used the power of the Saint Spirit to increase all his attribute. But he had not activated his invincible skill. If he could not defeat the Lord of Darkness, all his attributes would be reduced by 50%. It would be extremely dangerous. But then again, I have never activated my invincible skill while in the state of God's advent. William took a deep breath. The level 1 invincible holy thunder could increase all his attributes by 50%. Tell me, how much would the level 80 invincible holy thunder increase? 130%. From the beginning to the end. He had never used the invincible holy thunder while in the state of God's advent. This skill was his trump card. It was a super trump card that could allow him to have legendary combat power at the epic level. And when the two were added together, both were strong. Invincible. Activate. Rumble. A purplish-red lightning seemed to have struck from the universe. It traversed through time and space and created a crack in the metal cage above his head. Then, it forcefully entered William's body. At that moment, an extremely exaggerated aura surged between the heavens and the earth. William no longer looked like a half-elf. His entire body had transformed into purplish-red lightning. A visible shock wave spread out. It not only swept away the darkness, but it also extinguished the dark flames on the Lord of Darkness' body. At this moment, countless people looked over, both the dark creatures and the warriors of the war-ending empire. All of them stared in bewilderment at the Lord of the City of Dawn sage position, an advanced aura. But it was very unstable. But no matter how short the time was, this was a power that could absolutely crush the other party. Especially for the Lord of Darkness, who had dashed in front of William. He almost peed in his pants. What the F***ck? He had transformed and burned his origin. It was not abnormal for him to be one level higher than the Lord of Darkness. But he had risen from the advanced legendary level to the intermediate sage level. He had nothing to say about it. But he could still show off a little more? He had risen to the advanced sage level? What the F***ck? Are you F***king cheating or something? Tell me! He was fantasizing about grabbing William's collar. He was going to report him. Could he afford to play around? Were his bones made of godly equipment? How could he withstand such terrifying combat power? But there was a saying that went, in a battle of our level, is there any use in distancing ourselves? William squinted his eyes and laughed. At that moment, the Lord of Darkness retreated. He did not retreat voluntarily. He was sent flying like a cannonball. He was hammered from the eastern edge of the cage to the western edge. At this moment, everyone saw that William had returned to his previous position. William took a step forward again. The lightning disappeared. Once again, he appeared in front of the Lord of Darkness. He grabbed the Lord of Darkness's head and smashed it into the cage. Bang, bang, bang. The deafening sounds reverberated throughout the sky. Gregory had been hammered to the point that he looked like a human. He wanted to ask for help. William's body tilted to the ground. His waist was like a bow as he swung the heavenly saber. Swish! It was accompanied by an exaggerated and glaring lightning. The heavenly saber pierced through the chest of another Lord of Darkness and nailed him to the metal cage. Such a blow! It was on the verge of shattering this sturdy and indestructible, inescapable net. Then it was a one-man show. William's left hand strangled the Lord of Darkness's neck. His right hand was like a pile driver as he hammered the Lord of Darkness. Fresh blood, white bones, and brain matter were extracted. Even though the origin flame in his body surged, it was of no use. The other Lord of Darkness who was nailed to the cage pulled out his heavenly saber. After escaping from his predicament, he looked at the heavenly saber in his hand, and his eyes flashed with joy. But then, swish, a black shadow appeared in front of him, and he hurriedly dodged to the side, only to see his companion fall to the ground like a pile of mud, where he had just been, and then slowly fall to the ground. But it was only for a moment. The inescapable net's metal cage had a flaw. A human-shaped hole appeared in front of him. He immediately used a sage space scroll to escape the battlefield. He did not even intend to pick up his comrade's corpse. Instead, he entered the dimension vortex. D***eminent. Gregory roared. He looked at William's heavenly saber with a pained expression. He wished that he had the heavenly saber. He threw it randomly. Who asked him to throw it randomly? He was done for. The Lord of Darkness had such a powerful weapon. His name was not William, but Whitey. However, William appeared at the spot where the Lord of Darkness had just left without any change in his expression. A huge soul hand that was shining with golden light appeared and tore the space apart. A soul shadow and a body were forcibly pulled out from the space tunnel. Then, William smashed the body onto the ground. The Lord of Darkness, who had just recovered, blacked out again. He was smashed into a dizzy spell. In the next second, William walked to where the two of them were. He punched with both fists. Bang bang. The black flames on the surface of their bodies were forcibly extinguished by him. Cut off the possibility that they might die. At the same time, William sneered as he chopped off their limbs. He casually condensed a thunder chain with countless runes to trap them. Then, countless people widened their eyes as they watched William throw out thunder runes skillfully. The Lord of Darkness sealed the Lord of Darkness, who was not even as strong as a beginner professional. Then, he casually grabbed the horns on their heads and stuffed them into his portable alternate dimension. In one sentence, no matter how one looked at it, the Lord of the City of Dawn's method of sealing the Lord of Darkness was extremely proficient. He looked like a veteran. How many Lord of Darkness had he secretly captured to be so proficient? Many people had this question in their minds. William glanced at the gazes of the crowd and twitched his mouth awkwardly. He had only captured 3 Lord of Darkness. Why were they looking at him like that? Should he say? Was this the memory of Odin's avatar? Actually, he could not learn those tricks. He could not be bothered to use the sealing magic or the thunder chain. But what was beyond everyone's expectations was, during the period when Odin had become the king of gods, he had experienced many things that he could not imagine. This was the key reason why he was so proficient in sealing the Lord of Darkness. When he had the chance to excavate Odin's temple and find the treasures that he had hidden, but no matter what. This was a super battle of 1 against 2. The experts of the war-ending empire were completely subdued. As a veteran warlock sage, Gregory gulped and muttered, "This is really a sage arrival, and it's the kind that doesn't require a long period of rest. This state is too powerful. If the Lord of the City of Dawn becomes a sage. Gosh, the peak of sage? That's not right. According to this guy's performance in fighting beyond his level, he might have the opportunity to become a sage." The chief warlock sage of the Empire could not help but gasp. If that was the case, this person must not be provoked. In particular, even if they wanted to provoke him, they could only send a peak sage expert. However, he also had a Saint Pinnacle expert for a father. So the current Lord of the City of Dawn. The general trend had been formed. That was right. The general trend had been formed. Chapter 6:21. Vasak was almost killed by the Thunder Emperor. His origin was severely injured, and it was very difficult for him to escape from the Thunder Emperor. In addition, the two Lords of Darkness were captured alive by the Lord of the City of Dawn. In this battle, Grigory, the controller of metal, looked like a support no matter how one looked at it. He was purely a bystander. Of course, without his inescapable net forbidden spell, the prince would not have had the chance to capture the two Lords of Darkness alive. But no matter what, this incident caused a huge uproar in the two worlds. Many sages finally took the current Lord of the City of Dawn seriously. They no longer treated him as an ordinary legendary expert. Instead, they viewed him as a true sage expert who was on the same level as them. More importantly, this person was able to kill 3 sages at the legendary level. His power was obviously too strong. Many sages who had lived for a long time thought of the Second Era, the era when sages frequently appeared. The feeling of being ruled by a sage expert was really uncomfortable. In particular, some professionals from the war-ending Empire, the City of Dawn, and the Temple of Light had witnessed William's attack. They even started discussing whether they should give the Lord of the City of Dawn a sage title. Because he had consecutively captured 3 Lords of Darkness. This level of combat power was definitely worthy of a sage title. But because he had not attained the sage level, no one dared to make a rash decision. But the Thunder Emperor and the Thunder Emperor were very popular. As for the crisis at the outpost, of course, it had been completely resolved. As long as Daleks was here to suppress the situation, he would be able to ensure that the resources in the surroundings would be developed smoothly. After the battle ended, William stayed for a few days. He wandered around the outpost for a long time and confirmed the resources on the map. Then, he returned to the military fortress. The Thunder Emperor glanced at him expressionlessly. "You really went to take a look? Do you think I would lie to you? You're an advanced sage. If you lied to me, do you think I can defeat you?" William's mouth twitched. The sage level was divided into beginner, intermediate, advanced, and peak. There might also be existences at the level of Ursula. If there were no accidents, almost all unparalleled battle sages had the same level of power. They were close to the sage level but could not take the final step. In short, the higher one went, the more powerful they would be, and the greater the gap between them. Even if the prince could temporarily possess the battle prowess of a high-level saint, it would not be too stable. He would definitely not be a match for a high-level saint. If he were to fight the Thunder Monarch, he would definitely be beaten to a pulp. Unfortunately, the Thunder Emperor was clearly very displeased with him. It was because this bastard before him seemed to want to snatch his title. MMP. This was going too far. He was not a son at all. Right now, he couldn't wait to kill this little bastard. William did not continue to loiter around here to deal a blow to the weak heart of the Thunder Emperor. He decided to connect this outpost with the 10th outpost. Not only could the troops on both sides support each other, but they could also share some resources. Of course, he was not the only one who was thinking this. The Holy Father of Light had the same idea. That was to connect all the outposts in the Dark World, so as to ensure that even if some outposts were besieged, not only could they receive support from local forces, But they could also let other safer outposts send some experts to help. This was the only way. Only with so many outposts could they really gain a foothold in the dark world. However, there were still many things to consider. For example, why did the other outposts send reinforcements to you? What if there were casualties? What if it was a trap? What kind of compensation could the Thunder Emperor provide? In particular, many people did not understand the rules of the Dark World. Space sages and great enchanters had to understand the rules before they could build these teleportation formations and form a huge network of fast passageways. In short, there were many problems with the teleportation formations. The Holy Father of Light had to use his power to suppress the world to solve these problems. For the time being, William could only use his own diplomatic means to connect this place with the 10th outpost. Very soon, William stepped into the teleportation formation and returned to the capital of the war-ending empire. Meanwhile, he was calculating how much he had earned in the space tunnel. 2 sacred weapons. One was a dark element long spear, and the other was a dark element battle axe. The quality of these 2 sacred weapons was very average. Compared to most of the sacred weapons, they were not even worth mentioning. But these were weapons that the Lord of Darkness had created for himself. They were definitely much better than divine equipment. Even if they could not be sold at a high price, they would not be too cheap. It seems like I can only sell them to the Palace of Darkness. I can't use them. William scratched his head. There were no dark element professionals in the City of Dawn. Almost all the dark element professionals in the legendary continent had been recruited by the Palace of Darkness. Oh yes, Adolf can use them. William had inserted a spy into the Palace of Darkness. Now that he had reached the legendary level, he had become a high-level member of the Palace of Darkness. He could leave behind a sacred weapon for Adolf. Besides, it's better to kill the 2 Lord of Darkness than to capture them alive. I only obtained 2 billion experience points. William stroked his chin. These experience points were enough for him to reach level 260. He was only 10 levels away from the level 270 sage level. Then there's the random reward of plus 20. But it's still too little. I'll draw the lottery when I have 100 consecutive draws. His Royal Highness was never in a hurry when it came to consecutive draws. He knew his own limit. Even if he had to draw some of his endowments, he was not considered weak. Especially when he was about to become a sage. He wanted to know if a miracle would happen if he drew 100 consecutive draws when he was a sage. Oh yes, there's also the legendary points in the God's continent. If everything goes well, I've captured 3 Lord of Darkness. After a few months, I'll have to earn at least 2 continental legendary points. Swish. William had already left the space tunnel. He saw many Imperial warriors going back and forth to the teleportation portal. However, there were fewer of them. The crisis at the outpost had basically been resolved. Most of the professionals who were heading there were workers who were excavating the ore veins. When these people saw him, they bowed respectfully and said, "Greetings, Lord of the City of Dawn. Rise." "Greetings, Lord of the City of Dawn. The king has asked me to invite you over as a guest." A legendary expert came in front of William. William raised his eyebrows and laughed. "It's a joyous occasion, a joyous occasion." The latter revealed an awkward but polite smile. "Yes, the life potion sold by the Lord of the City of Dawn is very valuable. The king has decided to personally pass the resources to you. He has something to say." "Let's go." William nodded. Both of them walked towards the depths of the palace of the war-ending empire. Come to think of it, this was the first time William had met the Emperor of War-Ending. Back when he attended Caesar's wedding, he had only met the Emperor of War-Ending once. But at that time, he was only an epic professional. He was far from being noticed by the Emperor of War-Ending. But things were different now. The City of Dawn was not as powerful as the War-Ending Empire. But William's power was enough to make the dying Emperor of War-Ending take him seriously. 10 minutes later, The Emperor of War-Ending led William through the history of the war-ending empire. They finally reached the end. It had to be said. The palace of the war-ending empire was interesting. The history of the war-ending empire recorded the various battles, reforms, and events since the establishment of the war-ending empire. There were also the battle achievements of various sages. If an ordinary legend or saint were to walk this path, their pride would be slightly impacted. They would feel that they were too insignificant compared to the empire. Hence, they would become cautious. MMP. This was all a trap. William arrived at the hall of the war-ending Parliament. He scanned the magnificent building. It was impressive. It was much more impressive than the conference hall in the City of Dawn. He was tempted to tear down the conference hall in the City of Dawn and rebuild it. He saw the high and mighty Emperor of War-Ending, who did not look like he was about to die. He also saw Caesar, who was standing at the side, and an old man in ordinary clothes sitting on a chair. William's expression remained the same. But when he used his insight on the old man, he was surprised. The peerless battle sage. He was one of the 12 sages of the human race. But the old man did not care about William's gaze. He just closed his eyes and leaned against the chair to rest. "Greetings, King. I have brought the Lord of the City of Dawn." "Greetings, Emperor of War-Ending." William bowed. The middle-aged, white-haired great Emperor Ji-Gu slowly waved his hand and said, "You may leave." "Yes." The legendary expert nodded. He bowed and retreated out of the hall before turning to leave. Then he stood up and smiled at William. "The Lord of the City of Dawn is a sage. He is equivalent to a sage expert. You don't have to bow. Please take a seat." William smiled but did not say anything. He sat on an empty chair not far from the peerless battle sage. William glanced at Caesar, who was beside Emperor of War-Ending. This bastard did not dare to send a telepathic message to William. He did not even dare to glance at William. But, with the peerless battle sage here, Caesar did not have the guts to do so. William had just sat down when Emperor of War-Ending also sat down. He said, "The Lord of the City of Dawn was a great help during the battle at the Darkness Outpost. Not only did he help Gregory recover his combat power, but he also personally captured the 2 Lords of Darkness." William nodded. He was not a member of the War-Ending Empire, so William could not possibly reward him verbally, right? Glory medal? Sorry. Even if you gave me a special merit, I would not want it. Fortunately, Emperor of War-Ending was not stingy and would not go back on his words. He immediately took out 30 space rings and placed them on the tray. "Caesar, show this to the Lord of the City of Dawn." "Yes, Father." Caesar took the tray and handed it to William unhurriedly. William glanced at it and his eyes lit up. He immediately said, "That's enough. The deal has been completed. This is the contract that we signed." Caesar stretched out his hand and kept the contract. Then, he returned to the side of Emperor of War-Ending. Emperor of War-Ending said, "According to my son's invitation to support the outpost, as long as you capture or kill any Lord of Darkness, the outpost will give you the mining rights for 3 layers of the ore vein. But you've captured 1 more Lord of Darkness. You've helped us solve a big problem. What else do you want?" William narrowed his eyes. According to the deal, he had completed his mission by capturing 1 Lord of Darkness. The additional Lord of Darkness that he had captured was not part of his mission. However, the War-Ending Empire still wanted to compensate him. It was obvious that they wanted to befriend him. But William did not intend to be too greedy. After pondering for a while, he smiled and said, "I've just captured a Lord of Darkness. I can earn some money by selling him. Of course, if the Emperor feels bad and wants to compensate me with some divine or sacred weapons, I won't mind." The unparalleled battle sage closed his eyes and coughed. It was as if he was saying, "Don't push your luck." Emperor of War-Ending laughed and said, "How about this? I'll announce to the public that the War-Ending Empire will form a military alliance with the City of Dawn. We'll increase the trading volume of various goods and reduce the commercial taxes by 20%. From now on, the war-ending empire will fully support the development of the City of Dawn. What do you think? After finishing his words, Emperor of War-Ending sneered in his heart. Lad, you're still too inexperienced to play football with me. William raised his eyebrows. Military alliance? Gosh. It seemed like a perfect alliance that was extremely beneficial to the City of Dawn. For example, if the major forces knew about this, they would not dare to attack the City of Dawn. Even if the Killer Temple found out about this, they would not dare to attack the City of Dawn. William's military alliance was the war-ending empire. If they wanted to attack the City of Dawn, they would have to think about the consequences of angering the war-ending empire. But it did not make sense. The City of Dawn had a diverse mercenary legion. It was a neutral faction. He did not want the City of Dawn to be tied to a certain empire. If the war-ending empire started a war, their enemy would be the empires and even the Serafkin. Not only would they have a reason to let the Dawn warriors fight for free, but they could also silence William. That was simply a bloody loss, a loss-making transaction. However, Great Emperor Ji Gu still seemed to be extremely kind, making it impossible for anyone to refuse him. But William wasn't a coward. He rolled his eyes and said with a smile, "Forget about the military alliance. There's no problem with the military alliance. If our allies are in danger, both sides can consider whether or not to send reinforcements. Since the establishment of the City of Dawn, it has been a neutral faction. I'm sure the Emperor is aware of this." A football was kicked at William. Emperor of Warending's expression did not look good. Caesar had not seen his father like this for a long time. He immediately shot a few glances at William. Even the peerless battle sage squinted his eyes. He was about to open them. But no matter how strong he was, it was like a cool breeze caressing the mountain. William's indestructible Vajra body did not budge. After tens of seconds, Emperor of War-Ending laughed lightly. "Good. In that case, I, Li Wanji, shall not keep the Lord of the City of Dawn any longer. Caesar, send the guest off." Yes. William left the conference hall. He did not dare to delay Emperor of War-Ending's visit with Li Wanji. And just after he left, Emperor of War-Ending's expression was no longer dark. Instead, he smiled thoughtfully and said, "This guy is quite difficult to deal with. I thought that after Caesar became the emperor, the nation would not be stable. I wanted to tie the City of Dawn together to stop Peter's wild ambitions. But this guy is thinking too much. He's a sage, so he has his own pride. He can kill a sage as a legendary. If he becomes a sage, he won't have to worry about self-preservation. The City of Dawn will have great potential. As a neutral faction, we can move between two fronts. Of course, there's no need to tie ourselves to the Empire and lose the characteristics of a neutral faction." The peerless battle sage opened his eyes and said, "Was it the same for a battle sage?" Emperor of War-Ending asked curiously. "It's all right. When I was in the state of becoming a saint, I killed 2 dark sovereigns. I'm not convinced by anyone. Even when the human race emperor was also a saint, I didn't spoil him. Then it's my fault." The great emperor sighed softly and revealed a helpless expression. "You can't say that. After all, a sage isn't a sage. He doesn't have the strong recovery ability of a sage. Ahem, pretend that I didn't say that." The peerless battle sage's mouth twitched. The Lord of the City of Dawn was different. Although this kid was a ranger, he was proficient in close combat and had an unimaginable recovery ability. According to Gregory's report, it seemed that Gregory was right. Whether William was in the state of a legendary or a sage, he had a suffocating defense and recovery ability. He was not inferior to a sage. In that case, when my lifespan is exhausted, Battle Sage, please help me. Emperor of War-Ending's eyes flashed with reluctance, but he was determined. The peerless Battle Sage nodded without hesitation. All right. I'm just afraid that His Majesty can't bear to see him die. He's my son. No matter what, he's still my son. But for the future of the Empire, I have no choice. Emperor of War-Ending forced a smile. Is the throne stable? William glanced at Caesar, who was distracted. Caesar nodded absent-mindedly. Then he said, yes, it's stable. But Peter might die. I was thinking of keeping him alive and letting him live a peaceful life as a noble. That's normal. But the first prince must have done something to make Emperor of War-Ending decide to kill him. Caesar clenched his fists and narrowed his eyes. He intends to ally with the sages of other continents to help him seize the throne. If he doesn't die, who else will? Even Gregory, his mentor, can't save him. William chatted with Caesar for a while before he bade farewell and hurried to the headquarters of the Demon Hunter Guild. It was simple. He was going to rob the 7 dwarves of the Demon Hunter Guild, the sages of their wealth. Weren't they rich? Didn't they like the Lord of Darkness? Sure. William had decided. In the future, when I'm free, I'll go to the Dark World. I guarantee that each of you will have a treasure,